It might be a good idea to take a 2-minute recess after the war run, depending on.
Yeah, that's general consensus.
I should relocate the meeting. I said relocate.
All right. I think we are live on YouTube and live on Zoom.
Okay, at 7 o'clock, we'll go ahead and call to order the August the 14th, 2024 meeting of the Rockbridge County Planning Commission. Before we get going, the commission would like to welcome Mr. Tony Sabrisi as this new member who replaces Miss Melissa Hennis as a representative from the Carrs Creek Magisterial District. Go ahead with a roll call. Commission member Sabrisi.
Here.
Commission member Kramer.
Here.
Commission member Sandridge.
Here.
Commission member Whitmore is here and Commission member Beebe is absent. And before we get going, I need to read some important notices. In addition to citizens attending the meeting in person, citizens have several options to view or participate in the Zoom meeting webinar as described below. We will do our best to take citizen comment remotely. There are 2 options for citizens to offer comment. 1, to join the Rockbridge County Planning Commission Zoom webinar. The link is available on the county website to copy into the address line on your browser. 2, to join by telephone, you may dial in to one of the numbers listed on the county website. Webinar ID and password are there for convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Planning Commission YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press raise your hand button on the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you're calling in by telephone. At this time, we will proceed with the meeting. First up is citizen comments. Do we have anyone physically present to speak? I guess that's on anything that's not on the agenda.
There's no one signed up at this time. If anyone's online and would like to make a citizen comment, please utilize raise your hand. Not seeing, I'll turn the floor back over to the chair.
Okay. Next up, we have the minutes of the July 10th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review them?
Yeah, I make a motion that we accept the minutes as submitted.
I
second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the minutes pass. Next up, we have an election of officers, or in this case, officer.
It might be, we'll see. As reported at the beginning of meeting, Miss Melissa Hennis moved to the South River District, and therefore she could not no longer be a representative of Carrs Creek. With that being said, Melissa served as the chair of the Planning Commission, Mr. Whitmore is the vice chair, and I've always served as the secretary. So this will require a motion. You could do it all at one time, a motion for the chair, vice chair, and then secretary.
Okay, do we have a motion for any or nominations?
I make a motion to or nominate Tom Beebe for chair, Mr. Whitmore for vice chair, and Mr. Slayton as secretary.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I second that.
All in favor of those candidates?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and that is just through the end of the year, and we'll do this again in January. Is that correct, Chris?
That's correct. We do it normally it's at the beginning of the calendar year. Yes, sir.
Okay. Next up, we have board reports.
Yes, at the July 22nd meeting, the Board of Supervisors approved the comprehensive plan update. They also approved the zoning text amendment, country store / restaurant, as both of those as recommended by the Planning Commission, I should say. The Cave Creek LLC was withdrawn prior to going to the Board of Supervisors. So in addition to the July 22nd, they also approved a resolution for support of the 2 smart scale applications we have pending. That's of course for vehicular improvements on the Greenhouse Road and Econo Lane intersection, as well as pedestrian improvements up to that intersection. We were able to successfully, I think it was due on August 1st, and we were able to successfully make those applications to VDOT, I should say. Then on August 12th, the Board of Supervisors accepted the Natural Bridge Drag Strip Annual Report. You may recall the Natural Bridge Drag Strip has been closed for quite some time. The last time it ran was a short stint in 2019, and Mr. G.W. Fitzgerald was owner and operator of the oval track at that time, and he's the one who leased it and operated in 2019 for a short stint. Mr. Fitzgerald has leased the Natural Bridge Speedway leased the Natural Bridge Drag Strip from the current owner and has made plans to reopen. So the board accepted that report. The Community Development Committee met on July 19th and discussed the comp plan. And as always, essentially the past planning commission, upcoming planning commission, as well as the Board of Supervisors. Our next meeting will be on this upcoming Monday. I believe that's the 19th as well.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to our first public hearing. Warm Run Solar LLC of 107 5th Street, Charlottesville, Virginia, 22902, an application for a special exception permit for a public utility, which is develop and operate a 3 megawatt AC solar facility in the agricultural transitional AT zoning district. And we have staff and applicant presentations.
Yes, prior to turning the floor over to Sun Tribe Development, Warm Run, as you reported, Warm Run Solar LLC with the Charlottesville address has made an application for a special exception permit to develop a 3 megawatt, that's AC power, solar project. The property is outlined in magenta on our screen here. It's identified as tax map number 62-12-B1. The property is owned by Robert F. Huffman, trustee, located at his applicant per application address is 1318 Mount Atlas Road, Lexington, Virginia. Access to the proposed solar project is from Warm Run Road. Warm Run is further identified as Route 788. The property is in the agricultural and transitional zoning district per section 603B.03-14 of the regulations. Public utilities are used by special exception in the AT zoning district. A portion of the property is located in the 100-year floodplain. However, the proposed solar array is located out. So as far as the access road, that is the proposed access road, the layer I just turned on, and this is the the proposed fenced area associated with the solar array. In addition to tax map 62-12-B1, Robert F. Huffman, trustee, also owns 2 parcels to the south, which are located, bear with me, we'll highlight those. Not letting me highlight, that's interesting enough. Two parcels to the south. They're identified as tax maps number 62-A-63 containing 23.6 acres and tax map 62-A-63A containing 7.32 acres. Both of those are per tax structure. In addition to those 2 parcels to the south, Mr. Huffman, trustee, also owns one parcel to the north, and that's identified as tax map 62-12-A1, and that consists of 79.773 acres per tax records. The property is currently vacant and being utilized for cattle grazing. Now I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Tyler McGillivray with associate project developer with Sun Tribe Development. I certainly can. For that, okay.
I'm going to time myself here to make sure I don't go over. Good evening. My name is Tyler McGillivray, and I'm excited to share the story of Warm Run Solar with you tonight. Being born and raised in the Commonwealth and being an avid outdoorsman, developing well-sited, community-conscious projects is very important to me. And Warm Run is just that.
Excuse me, can everybody hear in the back?
If you keep talking, I'll try to turn it up.
Hey, Chris, it's not going to the next slide here.
Y'all bear with me, some technical difficulties on both ends. Try it like this. I just have to do it smaller. I do like that. I apologize. I'm not sure why the full screen is not working. Just from there, they can. Yeah. Sorry about that. Not sure why the full screen isn't clicking.
Do a sound check again.
Sound check, a little bit better.
Yeah,
Awesome.
okay.
So the sound was a little tough. My name is Tyler McGilvery. Excited to share the story of Warm Run Solar with everybody, and we'll start on slide number 2 here. I'd like to begin by sharing what the project is and what the project is not. What is Warm Run Solar? This is a small solar facility occupying less than 35 acres of a 56-acre parcel, which is a portion of a 4-parcel family property that totals 166 contiguous acres. It's an opportunity for the landowner and the county to preserve this land for decades by way of a low-impact temporary use that will be removed at the end of the project life. This allows the property to stay in the family for generations and prevents the land from being sold for more intensive, permanent development, such as residential or commercial uses. What is Warm Run Solar not? This project is not harmful to human health or environmental health, and this project is not a burden on the county. Once operational, Warm Run will be a quiet, rural neighbor generating electricity that will be consumed right here in this community without creating harmful noise, emissions, dust, or odors. It is also contributing over $460,000 over the life of the project to Rockbridge County without the corresponding pull on local roads, water, sewer, and things of that nature. Throughout the remaining slides, I plan to demonstrate how SunTribe develops solar differently than other projects you may have heard about in the news or seen in other parts of the county. We are here seeking the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval. I'd like to take a moment to thank the Planning Commission and the Rockbridge County Planning Department for giving me the opportunity to present tonight. We've been working with our landowner since 2021 and with staff on this project since February of 2023. Now, a little bit about SunTribe. As a company, both founded and based in Virginia, we care deeply about the Commonwealth. My colleague John actually has family roots in Rockbridge, where his ancestors have been since the 1850s. He and his family still enjoy their family farm to this day. As proud Virginians, we are also a founding member of a solar workforce development organization called SHINE to help drive solar job creation in the state, and we are on the Virginia Governor's Clean Energy Board. Here are 4 key points about this project. Warm Run Solar is a proposed 3 megawatt solar project with no battery energy storage component. It's well sited in the ag transitional zone near existing commercial uses. The project will connect to existing distribution power lines on site. This is a domestic source of energy with no fuel cost, no noise, and no emissions during operation. These projects are also required to be removed at the end of the project life. Another cool thing about Warm Run is that there are 2 state-level programs that this project can enter into. One of these is the Shared Solar Program that can benefit low-income subscribers in Rockbridge County. Oftentimes we get asked, what does this project do for me? In addition to the Shared Solar Program that I just mentioned, there are several very tangible benefits that I'd like to highlight. Solar projects can be a great complement to the community and local economy. This is a temporary use that will generate over $460,000 for Rockbridge County without the draw on county services. This projection comes directly from Rockbridge County tax code. By bringing money in this way, Rockbridge can keep taxes down. During the construction phase of Warm Run Solar, it is estimated that there will be a one-time pulse of economic activity to Rockbridge County, totaling approximately $2 million, which includes economic output and the associated wages and benefits. During the construction phase of Warm Run Solar, solar is a source of zero emission energy production from a long-term energy source, the sun, which helps to stabilize energy prices. Everyone here is relying on electricity. No matter how it's generated, everyone will benefit if electricity prices are reduced. By way of example, Old Dominion Electric Cooperative, which supplies power to BARC, estimated tens of thousands of dollars per year of savings to BARC members for a 3 megawatt project that has previously been approved in Rockbridge County. Often we hear from neighbors that this interim land use is preferred to houses, which has been referred to as the last crop. A gentleman stood up at one of our other public hearings this year and said that although panels may not be my first choice, I far prefer them to a subdivision. We have heard this sentiment echoed countless times, a sentiment that extends to other more intensive uses of the property, such as commercial centers or business parks, all of which result in an increase in lighting, traffic, and noise to the area. This project has been well screened from adjacent parcels. We are proposing a 25-foot wide vegetative buffer that was improved upon through conversations with neighbors and county staff that will extend over 4,400 feet. The project has been well hidden from Route 11 and Interstate 64 and 81. I know what everybody is thinking. They're thinking of the Fairfield project. I can unequivocally say that this project is not that, and it will not be that. Additionally, we are very fortunate to be able to site this project on a 166-acre contiguous parcel. That gave us the opportunity to site the project in the best location for solar and a location that was farther away from adjacent neighbors. And so the properties to the north are over 1,000 foot to the closest property line to the north, and it's over 1,300 feet to the closest residence to the north. The project area will be preserved in native grasses and pollinators for the life of the project, and the remaining 130 acres has the ability to be retained in agricultural use for the life of the project. These are not stock photos. SunTribe was involved in the development of each of these sites, which are great examples of what sites with established ground cover look like. A quick reminder, these photos are taken from inside of the facility fence line and inside any vegetative buffering. This is not representative of what a well-screened facility such as Warm Run looks like from outside of the screening and from adjacent properties or rights of way. Warm Run special exception permit as a public utility is pursuant to section 603B.03-14 of the Land Development Regulations in the Agricultural Transitional District. This slide highlights a few of the goals and objectives and strategies in the 2016 to 2036 Rockbridge County Comprehensive Plan that Warm Run conforms with. The rest of this list can be found on pages 14 to 17 of the project's application narrative. On page 78, under the natural environment goals, development is recommended on slopes of less than 15% and good air quality is a priority to the county. The majority of Warm Run's array footprint is on slopes of less than 10%. Unlike traditional carbon-based energy sources, a solar facility produces no emissions when generating electricity. In terms of land use, those goals are shown on page 247, and they recommend that development should occur on vacant parcels located within or adjacent to the developed parcels. The project is well sited in an ag transitional zone near a Ford dealership, a medical office, and a home center warehouse. On pages 153 to 154 of the comprehensive plan, the economic goals promote the development of alternative energy and associated jobs, as well as a favorable cost-benefit analysis for the proposed development. Jobs will be created during the engineering, construction, and operational times of the project. In diversifying electrical generation, this project supports Governor Youngkin's all of the above approach to energy policy according to the Virginia Energy Plan. The project, again, will generate over $460,000 for Rockbridge County without the draw on county services. In terms of the new comprehensive plan that was just adopted by the county, it contains language about suburban service areas and the desire to develop and implement a solar ordinance in the county. Suburban service areas, which this project parcel falls within, are areas that the county encourages development based on proximity to existing development and existing zoning designations, such as the ag transitional designation. The new comprehensive plan also speaks to the implementation of a solar ordinance with the aim to minimize adverse visual effects of solar, maintain the character of the land use, and avoid potential adverse impacts to the property. We appreciate the thoughtful approach that the county and community is taking in developing a solar ordinance. We have been in constant communication with county staff throughout this process, and Warm Run Solar aligns with the draft solar ordinance in its current form. Several resources and studies were included as part of our application supporting the health and safety of solar technology and these projects. We get a lot of questions about safety, and there are many common misconceptions. I'm going to speak specifically about the main components of a facility, which are steel, aluminum, glass, and silicon. The figure on the screen is a cross-section of what panels are made of. You can see that the aluminum frame holds glass over plastic encapsulate, which sandwiches photovoltaic cells entirely in plastic. The solar cells are made of silicon, which has the same makeup as sand. Other than some lead used in soldering, you can see that the materials involved are not inherently concerning. Solar panels are safe. They're located on our schools, such as Washington and Lee. Devil's Backbone has them on their warehouse just north of Lexington. They're located on hospitals, public buildings, homes, RVs, boats, and even in my wristwatch. Included with our application was an NC State study and a Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources study that confirms this information. I'll be brief here because what I really want to discuss is this third section, which is decommissioning. Construction of this project is estimated to take less than 10 months. After construction is complete, the project will be a quiet, rural neighbor with basically no traffic, no noise, and 24/7 remote monitoring for performance and safety for the life of the project. During the project's life, there's no permanent on-site staff, minimal to non-existent traffic, and no lights. It's important to remember that the vegetation, which is the new buffer and the pollinator grasses inside of the fence, will be maintained for the duration of the project. This brings us to the end of the project's operational period, and we get a lot of questions about this. The entire facility will be removed at the end of the project's life, and materials will be resold, repurposed, recycled as practical. The decommissioning process will require oversight and approval by the county and will be entirely paid for by the project, not the landowner, not the neighbors, not the Rockbridge County taxpayer. To guarantee this, a decommissioning bond is required and updated every 5 years to ensure that the capital is available to remove the project when the time comes. After decommissioning, the land, which at that point will still be owned by the landowner, can be returned to its previous use at the landowner's discretion. The Warm Run Solar project provides many benefits to Rockbridge County. Solar electricity generation is safe. It's a reliable technology which helps stabilize electricity prices. Warm Run Solar is well sited with setbacks and buffering, mitigating viewshed impacts to nearby properties, and it is well hidden from Route 11 and Interstates 81 and 64. I will reiterate again that this is not the Fairfield project. The project will generate over $460,000 in direct revenue to Rockbridge County without the accompanying draw on county services. The project will be a quiet, rural neighbor for the life of the project. If I didn't mention it previously, parcels in the AT zoning district can be subdivided into 2-acre lots. The project parcel specifically, could be a 24-home subdivision, while the entire Huffman property could become well over 50 homes. This project is low impact. It harms no one. It has significant tangible benefits to the county, and it will be a quiet rural neighbor for the life of the project. Thank you for your time. That concludes my formal presentation. I'm happy to answer questions now or after public comment.
Does anyone have any questions this time?
I do. If somebody else wants to go first.
Go ahead, Tony.
Being a new guy, so I'm gonna ask some questions here that that hopefully it clarifies some things for me. And I've been through all 300 pages, and so I'm trying to get a good understanding of what we could possibly sign up to. One of the things, and this is maybe an administrative technicality thing, is that in past approvals or past, they included the concept plan in the conditions. I'm trying to figure out exactly that we have an understanding that what the concept plan is. It's obviously not all 300 pages of the document. How do you, right now, talking to Chris, it's essentially the drawings, P001 through P107. Is that what you see as the?
Yeah, so and we called that kind of this conceptual sheet set, would be
okay.
What we were referring to, Chris, unless there's something that I'm missing in terms of what previous applications have provided, and then we can address that.
No, it would be, a condition could be substantial compliance with the conceptual site plan titled Warm Run Solar LLC, prepared by Sun Tribe, dated April 4th, 2024, and a revision date of July 3rd, 2024. So that's unique to those particular.
You're getting that date off the
actual
first
plans.
revision. Well, the first revision of the drawings. Right?
First revision.
Well, I'm saying the only place I find that date
That is there. Yes.
down here.
That's correct.
Okay,
That
so that's
is
the
the
first
document
revision.
that this is referencing. That's
So,
correct.
In looking at it, this then would become binding if such a restriction was included.
Such a condition. Yes, sir.
Um, because in lieu of that, I mean, I looked through this, and as far as any reference to any other documents that are there, the only reference on these sheets I see is Appendix H, which is,
Is it the landscape buffering?
yes,
Yeah,
landscape buffering, which I mean, to me is an important piece of that. And
Absolutely.
so to me, that would be included in that. There's always, I mean, maybe you can include, I mean, am I seeing that right? Is that
You are
that would
seeing
now
that
be,
correct,
that would be
yes.
included?
Yeah, that would be included. Yes,
So a
sir.
lot of the other language stuff we saw in the briefing is not going to be necessarily carried over. So anything we may have concerns of needs to be added that's not included on here.
Yes, that would include the access road, the proposed panel area, the proposed fenced area, the proposed landscaping buffers, everything that's in the schematic site plan.
Okay. So I just want to make sure when that I know, I said there's a lot of words in those 300 pages, and I don't want to think that something's included it's not, and so that becomes part of the conditional. If we were to do that, it would become part of the conditional. So I know what we're talking about.
That's correct.
Essentially talking about this and Appendix H, which is referenced in there.
And Chris, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, also any of the other proposed conditions.
would play
Oh,
into
yeah.
that.
So I'm not,
Yeah,
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 I'm just
okay.
saying is that if the condition is included in here, we don't need to add that. And if it's not included in here, we do. That we would have a concern of.
Yes, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
Got that straight. I just, because right now I said there's a lot of information here, but this is the Bible, so to speak here. Little change. You mentioned 35% of it could be graded, less than 35%. Can you give me some insight into how that number came up and why it can't be less? Or
Absolutely. So through conversations with county staff, it was relayed that, for kind of lack of a better number, that anything less than 50, that we needed to try and get less than 50%. And so we took that to our engineers, and based on the proposed height of the panels, we came up with 35% cut within the panel area. And that's where that number came from.
okay, so you didn't just go say, well, we'll do it 49. There's a technical basis.
It was certainly,
for that.
yeah, it was technically done.
You minimize the amount of grading.
Absolutely. And sorry, that it pertains to the grading. And I don't know off the top of my head, but the grading sheet in the sheet set shows areas within the panel area that are between 10 and 15% of slope. And so it was that number is directly attributable to the areas within the panel area that are between 10 and 15%. It's 35%.
Go into I want to go a little bit, a few questions on in the construction piece of it. That's 8 to 10 months whatsoever, and or about. And you mentioned a lot of distances that when finished the field is. I mean, there is going to be a disruption to the folks on Warm Run Road. It's a single lane gravel. Then you're going to turn into the property. You took me on that, so I'm pretty familiar with that. I understand that road would be improved. That goes through the property. I guess part of the concern is that property, we're not making any decisions in regards to the property that road goes across.
That's correct.
So the concern I would have, and it might be an innocent thing, that somebody delivering something in there decides that they're going to leave their vehicle on that property because it's going to be open. I mean, there's nothing in any transportation plan, I think, that addresses that. You have a laydown area within the, you got 20, you said at times there's going to be 20 to 30 people. That could be 20 to 30 cars as well. Has that all been taken into account?
I appreciate the question. To be clear, the 80-acre parcel to the north, the project does not have site control on that parcel. And so the project and the special exception permit is only for the 56-acre parcel. And so the only thing that would be going across that northern parcel would be access. the laydown road is, or the laydown area, excuse me, is sited on the project parcel, within the project area. And so that would be the area where deliveries were loaded and unloaded. There wouldn't be, the project would not be using the northern parcel for anything other than simply ingress and egress.
Okay, right. I think that's using Mr. Stout's property. You talked about all the distances. That lane is, I think, about 300 feet from his property. And again, during that construction phase, I'd hate to think that people start taking advantage of that open space there and put that in there. And I don't know if that's a condition we might be able to include if we were to go that route.
In my opinion, a condition is not needed in that case, due to the fact that would be another special exception for a public utility laydown yard. And we recently went through one of those with.
Well, I guess I'm more concerned about unintentional, accidental usage of somebody that's doesn't know the rules. The delivery people won't necessarily know that. And so someone's gonna have to police that. And
Certainly. And that would be the responsibility of the Office of Community Development.
And also, I mean, one of the things you included was the DOT letter. And I guess, again, this might be through permitting and things like that. I mean, the DOT letter only addressed site. I mean, how far you can see. It's not on a curve, so it was okay. So, I mean, it doesn't address a lot of the other things. And I'm assuming, Chris, that permitting would take care of a lot of that in terms of actually with the laydown, I mean, the road that they put in there.
The VDOT would only pertain to the entrance. VDOT usually, the entrance to VDOT is the first 25 or 50 feet of the entrance off of the public road.
Okay, but there's permits associated with that.
Absolutely, yes. Currently, Virginia VDOT requires, I think it's a low volume commercial entrance permit versus a private or moderate volume commercial entrance permit, or a private entrance permit, I should say. And then it goes low volume, moderate, high volume. I believe a solar facility this size would fall under a low volume commercial. Could be moderate, but I'm uncertain.
The other thing I had thought about during the construction is I'm making an assumption that the land will be continued to use for grazing, and I didn't see anything that alluded to how you and the cattle are going to be able to coexist during the construction. Fences won't necessarily be up and things like that. You've addressed that with the people that use the land for cattle right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That has not been addressed yet, but there's every intention that after the construction period, it would remain in the agricultural use, in terms of, if that's something that's beneficial for the folks that use the area right now, and that's something that our landowner would be interested in doing. That's certainly something that could be looked into.
I mean,
Certainly. And to address kind of one of the questions that you had about VDOT, they didn't raise any concerns in terms of the low volume construction entrance, and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but at the time of like the detailed site plan review would be when you have the construction traffic management plan and, time of day restrictions, delivery, and things of that nature that can kind of be imposed either through that or through specific conditions.
I mean, I assume some of those exist. That's something I don't quite understand.
The appropriate time to address those type of concerns would be the special exception process through conditions.
Let's see. Let's skip right. One of the things that as you transfer from construction to operation, I guess, and it's a business thing with we're talking to Warm Run Solar LLC, Sun Tribe.
Yep.
When operation starts, do you have an odds of who's going to be running it at day one?
It's a great question, and I appreciate it. Something that gets asked quite a bit. Sun Tribe is recognized as an industry leader in the pre-construction development space, especially in the Commonwealth. And so that's what we specialize in. One of the most natural owner operators, which I think is the question that you're asking, are utilities. And so for this project specifically, one of the more natural owner operators would be Dominion.
Do you have agreements with them at this point? Or?
We don't have agreements that are signed at this point, but we're definitely looking at that.
I mean, one of the concerns there is, and particularly one of the things I asked about the buffer plan, the appendix H, is that I can plant a 6-foot tree, but I can't make it live unless I'm taking care of it. And your beautiful pictures, I mean, that does wonders. But I mean, my yard looked pretty bad this year with the drought, and probably could use reseeding or something. I mean, those are the kind of things that I guess concern is once it gets handed over, how do we make sure that that is binding on any future owners?
The conditions that if granted by the Board of Supervisors, the governing body, obviously, the conditions run with the land. So they would be binding and enforced with any landowner, or in this case,
And who would enforce that? I mean, how would that be enforced?
the Office of Community Development.
Okay, well, the last thing I'll probably get yelled at on my is the decommissioning. I mean, your comments about it being a temporary use and being able to return is meaningless if that decommissioning is not. And again, another thing is keeping it. You're not going to decommission it, right? I mean, the odds are Sun Tribe will have nothing to do with the decommissioning, other than maybe a consulting thing. So somebody that we don't know is not in this room is going to be responsible for decommissioning. And some of the things I read made it sound like it could possibly fall onto the county. And I understand the idea of bonds and having that things cost on, but I don't know that if there's any county employees in here that they want to take on that kind of effort at the end. And I guess it's a fear that that the decommissioning will. And in fact, one of the things it said in if I remember correctly, that and I've talked about that, is that the decommissioning agreement is between you and the landowner, and it's approved by the county.
It's accepted by the
Accepted
county.
by the county. Well,
Yes.
accepted doesn't sound as strong as approved.
What's that? Sorry, sir.
Acceptance doesn't sound the same as approved. It sounds like it could be. I mean, if the landowner says, I wasn't using that land for the last 40 years, I don't, just leave it there.
That would not be acceptable. I mean, that per state law, we require a decommissioning plan during the legislative process. And then therefore, as far as the decommissioning agreement go, the decommissioning agreement is a legal document. Of course, you're in the online documents, you have the decommissioning plan that would be incorporated into the agreement. The agreement is usually drafted by the attorney for the project owner, and then reviewed, modified, negotiated with the county attorney.
Okay.
Prior to myself or the zoning administrator, director of community development, signing that, accepting that.
Well, going back to my beginning thing, is that decommissioning is not part of this concept plan.
It certainly is. Yes. I mean, there's a decommissioning plan in your package, and that is reflected in the draft conditions.
It's not referenced in the concept plan, which would be.
But there's a draft condition that requires the decommissioning plan. I think it's maybe condition 4.
Yes.
Is that correct? And to kind of piggyback on what Chris was saying, I actually wrote this down. Section 15.2-2241.2 is the specific section of the Code of Virginia that mandates a decommissioning agreement be entered into between the project and a locality that provides the requirement for.
I read that as well, and that, to me, the acceptance by the county is not the same as what I think that reads. That's my personal. Somebody's.
Meaning, are you concerned about the word acceptance or?
Yeah, I mean, to me, acceptance is either you accept it or reject it. You don't. I mean, I don't know what that means.
If I can comment on the legal aspects of it, what would happen in decommissioning plans if if for some reason the operator at that time didn't follow through the decommissioning plan, we'd be able to take legal action against them in the form of civil action. That's the purpose of the bond, is to ensure that the financing is in place to do so.
I understand that.
Sorry. What I'm saying is this would be a legal document like any other legal document, which would be able to be enforced through the courts if they didn't adequately follow what the document says. And the purpose of the bond is to ensure that the financing is in place. So if the company went bankrupt that was running at that time, the bond would still provide the financing to be able to decommission. So that's it's no stronger and no weaker than any other civil agreement, contractual agreement that we're involved with.
I think I'll yield the rest of it. Anybody have any questions?
I'll probably, why don't we wait until after the, here, now I've got some questions that are mostly with Chris. Oh, sorry. Most of the questions that I have deal with Chris. There, you want me to ask them now?
Either way,
Okay.
either be
Well,
now or after the public hearing.
First of all, I want to thank you for the presentation. It's the best application and presentation that we've had solar. And I'd like to now publicly thank Chris and his staff about the comprehensive plan and getting the solar ordinance and the land use ordinances, and especially Ms. Hanson here. They did a yeoman job. Having said that, I looked through the land use ordinance and I really have a question about the slope. I mean, you said the engineers looked at it and a lot of people confuse 15% with 15 degrees. And I just want to make sure that we understand that it is 15% is the restriction, and that we have a civil engineer somewhere that will, that one section, if the grading's not right, it's going to be more than 15% there.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that, the clarification between the two. Our engineers definitely were using, the correct contours on that. And I think it kind of goes in line with the contours that the county are using, I believe 2-foot contours. And yeah, definitely less than 15%, not 15 degrees.
Okay. Then 717.052 is the compatibility with the surrounding land use. I mean, there's no way that a solar field is compatible with pastures and forest and residential. So I look at that, and then part 3 is the topography of the site and the surrounding area. We're not a flat county, and you look at it, you got a lot of vistas there, and you got homes that are in some places are double wides and they got $1 million view. That area there, one of the few places you can actually see the Blue Ridge, the Hogback, and House Mountain from the same location. And, looking over solar, anyway, that's a comment that's in our land use ordinances.
And if I may interrupt, that is a draft ordinance. And so that is not on the books yet, obviously. So with that being said, this application is not falling under that ordinance.
So no matter what is in our land use ordinance with the solar, then it's not going to cover this.
We are, as you know, we're currently working on an ordinance associated with solar, and that is in a draft form. To back up a little bit, in the next 30 to 45 days is my goal, is staff's goal, to have a joint work session between the Planning Commission, Board of Supervisors, and the Solar Committee. With that being said, it's considered a zoning text amendment. And in order for us to adopt a zoning text amendment, we have to go through the public hearing process. That would be a recommendation, public hearing with the Planning Commission, and a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors, as the governing body, would have the final authority to adopt that zoning text amendment. In this case, we're talking about a solar ordinance, or not.
So let's move on to the comprehensive plan. Is that approved?
That is approved. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
comprehensive plan, chapter 2, page 59, you're talking about the natural environment. I mean, you look around Rockbridge County and it's beautiful. I mean, we had this discussion about Irish Creek. And you go there and I don't see anything natural about solar panels. Okay. Chapter 5, page 151, the economy. This is the goal in the comprehensive plan. Make agriculture economically profitable for continued viability in Rockbridge County. Objective, encourage long-term farmland and forest conservation. Where does this improve agriculture in our county? I don't see it. Chapter 9, land use, page 262, gold. Agricultural areas are to be maintained and incompatible land uses such as large-scale commercial and industrial developments. And this is industrial development, correct?
It's a commercial development.
Okay, but the land's going to be zoned in industrial or
No, sir.
commercial?
This is a special exception associated with the AT zoning district. So the
Okay.
underlying zoning would remain the same. And I believe that that section, without having it in front of me, my computer's right there so I can verify it. But that section probably is relating to the rural village, or excuse me, the rural areas of the county.
Okay,
as
so
in
what's it going to be taxed as?
commercial.
Commercial, okay,
yes.
that answers that question there.
Now, is that commercial tied into your actual $460,000 over the lifespan? Is that already compensating for the change?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, it would be 5 times what the taxation would be in its current use, and that includes the real property tax, which is at correct me if I'm wrong, $15,000 an acre for solar, and then the energy revenue taxation, which is $1,400 per megawatt.
So
on an escalating
I had
scale.
sent an email out this afternoon to the members of the planning commission and to recap it. I confirmed with the commissioner revenue that this property is currently in land use taxation programs as 95% of most farms in Rockbridge County, large tracts, if you will. The proposed use, or I'll just say we'll keep it generally, a utility scale or community scale solar would not qualify for land use taxation. So in addition for that acreage being removed, rollback taxes for the last 5 years would have to be paid. And then moving forward, it would be taxed as commercial acreage. Currently, that commercial acreage associated with other solar fields in Rockbridge County is taxed at $15,000 an acre with the area associated with the solar rates and other improvements. On the last part of this would be the megawatt, $1,400 per megawatt as far as the revenue sharing ordinance goes. So the Board of Supervisors in June of 23 approved a revenue sharing ordinance anticipation for some new state law that was taking effect the following month, July 1st of 23, that allowed smaller under 5 megawatts solar facilities to have revenue sharing agreements and siting agreements. So knowing that was coming, they passed that revenue sharing agreement at $1,400 an acre.
Okay. So going through these, I come up with some comments and observations, and I see solar, in this case, helping an individual because you're paying them a fee every month, right? Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I don't see how it supports agriculture. It supports financially an individual. I don't see any money going towards agriculture there. And
If I may, in this specific instance, the 56-acre parcel applying for a special exception permit for the solar project allows the landowner to retain ownership of the residual 166 acres and leave that in agriculture, the 130 acres in agriculture for the life of the project and beyond. It allows him the funds necessary to keep the family in the property.
and that's an individual. This individual. Anyway, okay. So what's the manufacturer of origin on the panels? I know on the construction, and assembly. It's somewhere in the United States, but are these Chinese panels?
Although we provided a couple of sample like module and inverter spec sheets in the application document, that the final panels and inverters and that type of equipment won't be decided until site plan approval. Kind of market goes up and down, and there might be better technology, or there are tariffs and things of that nature.
Okay. So the current landowner owns the land that's going to be under the panels, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So then the landowner is responsible for the property taxes, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What happens if he doesn't pay the property taxes?
The same thing that would happen to any other property in Rockbridge County that doesn't pay the property taxes.
Okay.
It would go to a delinquent, it could potentially, after years, go to a delinquent tax.
So my departed friend on the planning commission mentioned this, that maybe Rockbridge County ends up owning the land? We don't own, who owns the panels?
The project owner would own the project.
That would own the panels?
Yes, sir. And the facility.
Interesting.
With a lien holder, we're required
Right.
to notify the lien holder too, if I recall correctly, as far as a delinquent tax sale.
Yeah, I would assume that probably, I haven't seen your agreement with the landowner, but I assume that there's some provisions in there that if the landowner failed to meet certain obligation. Sorry, I'm assuming that any agreement that they would have in place as the tenant over that land, that there's some language in there that would pertain to the landowner maintaining their obligations to pay the taxes, et cetera. So it's if there was a tax sale, we wouldn't normally end up the owners. What would happen is we would force the land into a tax sale and someone come and buy it. So the county is not going to be the long-term owner of that. We would sell it. We would take our whatever outstanding tax out of the proceeds from the sale. That would go to the county coffers, and then the owner would be whoever bought it out of that. And that would be, but I assume there might be some provisions within the whatever agreement you have with the landowner that adds certain protections or obligations, but I haven't seen that.
Yeah, and I'd actually be happy to call our CEO up here to maybe speak to this a little bit more in detail, if he doesn't mind.
I'm not sure that's necessary. at this time.
No.
But we appreciate
I
it.
just want to make sure.
The point is,
it's addressed.
the
That's
county
good.
won't end up as the owner. They can't, we
That's
don't,
good.
in tax sales, we always just sell the
Yeah.
property and take our taxes and it goes to someone else.
Yeah, thank you.
And it would sell subject to the same obligations would sit on the
Thank you,
property.
Council. I just have one observation. I talked to quite a few people around the country, and I can't find where a solar field has been decommissioned in the last 12 to 18 months. Do you know of any?
I don't know of any specifically. The decommissioning of these facilities is something that's we've kind of covered the fact that it's mandated by state law. We have, our company specifically has recycled panels before and gone down that route. I don't know specifically.
That's not
of
a
any- I-
solar field. That's just
I can-
some
I can
panels.
call up at one of our engineers and he can address that though.
Evening, Trevor Francis with Sun Tribe. Actually, we have a division of Sun Tribe, our asset management division that does O&M maintenance on some of these facilities. They're working with Dominion Energy right now to decommission a facility within the Commonwealth. So sorry about that. They're working with Dominion Energy right now to decommission a facility similar size within the Commonwealth that hasn't mobilized yet, but that's a process they're going through right now that we'll learn a lot from.
I mean, I would like to see, yeah, we can talk about recycling and everything, but we know the costs associated with recycling versus throwing it in a landfill. So,
Right.
I mean, not having a number to go by, we can all talk 80% and all this, but what's the reality is what I worry about.
Absolutely. And it's a valid concern. And that's, I think, one of the main reasons there is a refresh requirement, I believe, every 5 years. Is that right? And so, initially when a facility like this is built, the equipment has a very high residual value. That's because we're not talking about recycling panels. We're not talking about scrapping equipment. We're talking about equipment that is still relatively new and can be immediately resold and redeployed. And so the risk associated with that is extremely small. But as time goes on and that equipment gets a little bit older and you start looking at, okay, we're talking less about reusing and more about potentially recycling, scrapping steel and similar things, that consistently gets updated. And we're starting to see, again, going through the process right now of a project getting decommissioned. And I think we're all going to have a really good idea what that starts to look like as we get a little bit farther down the road and you get a little bit farther away from the, hey, this is still basically a new panel that could be redeployed somewhere else.
And I get that. I mean, but look at some of the weather patterns lately. I mean, all the storms, everything's now severe. We've had hail. When we talk about damaging and integrity, I mean, who's the one that, I mean, how often do you guys even go out and check? Is it like every monthly, weekly? What kind of routine schedule? Because once you compromise the integrity of it, then that creates the possibility of an environmental issue.
So the facilities are monitored 24/7. And obviously, once they're in place, there's motivation there as a return on the investment to make sure that it's performing. Because if it's performing, it's producing energy, it's producing revenue for it. And so there's regular checks, physical checks in a field. There's consistent monitoring to make sure it's reporting as you'd expect. Whenever there is some type of event, as you said, maybe there is a heavy rainstorm, heavy hailstorm, it's often you're going to go out, you're going to do a visual of the site and make sure there's not anything that you don't expect there. And again, this is a long-term facility that has expectations around return for an asset owner. And they're going to want to make sure that their equipment, that their return is protected through insurance as well. So if there is an issue that's identified, they're motivated to get that fixed quickly so that it can begin to produce again. And then there is insurance that covers that as well.
You mentioned the word refresh. It kind of sounds like part of decommissioning, in terms of, I mean, you're talking about replacing panels that have lost efficiency, or I mean, give me a definition of refresh. I mean, you're talking about all the panels?
Yeah, I guess in the scope of what I was discussing around decommissioning, that was a refresh of the decommissioning plan, which a major
Oh, you're
component
not
of
talking
that-
about refreshing
Yeah.
the site. Okay.
So-
I mean, to me, it sounded like scheduled maintenance would be on something you would do regularly. And that could involve taking a panel off and then knowing where they go then.
And that decommissioning plan refreshes to make sure that the surety bond.
Okay, I'm
Covers,
sorry. I thought when he
yeah.
said refresh, I was picturing
Apologies.
a mechanical refresh.
Any other questions at this time?
No.
Thank you.
I just had a couple before I let you go. The lease term for this project is 40 years, is that correct?
It's 30 to 40 years. Yes, sir.
30 to 40,
Yeah.
it's not been decided yet. So can you infer that the panel life is up to 30? Because I think some of the past projects, they were talking 25 is like the useful life of existing technology. So just curious if it's improved 5 years or what it is currently.
Absolutely. So yeah, to be clear, it's 30 with the option of 2 5-year extensions on that. That's where that 30 to 40 comes from. The useful life of the panels will be able to extend to the 40-year of the project. Obviously, as Trevor was saying, there might be a panel here or there that need to be replaced because of mechanical things.
Okay. And I apologize if you have it in your application somewhere, but the fence style, I didn't see a detail on that. Is that chain link or
Woven wire.
woven wire? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
That was,
Is that in there?
and that was requested specifically by the county, and it, honestly, I think that they look a lot better, so.
And one thing we discussed in the field, on the field visit, was the inverter lights. Were you able to track that down if, they have them or how visible they are?
We actually, I talked to Trevor about that. I'd hate to call Trevor back up.
Yeah, so typically no permanent lighting associated with a facility like this. There is some small status LEDs. I mean, we're talking about similar to what you'd see on this mic here, not anything that you're going to be able to see at any sort of distance. So at nighttime, it's going to be completely invisible to the eye. There's not going to be any light.
Okay, thank you all. I guess that's all we have for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to open the public hearing. Chris, is there anyone physically present? It's kind of a joke, not, who would like to speak?
Mr. Alan Stout, followed by Michael Davis. Mitchell, apologize.
And now, before you get started, I will say, please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less and state your magisterial district, please.
You don't.
Can we turn this up more? I mean, is it max?
It's at max volume, so you might have to come down.
Let me just put it up there. I'm starting my time yet. Okay. We bought the 136 Warm Run property in December 2021, believing this will be our final home. We have invested the last 2.5 years personalizing our scenic property. Now we are faced with a destructive assault on our home and the enjoyable, peaceful quality of life that we have worked so hard to obtain. The potential invasion of a solar power plant has been birthed by a neighboring landowner from whom we bought our property and a foreign-owned solar company with a proven history of numerous DEQ-cited environmentally destructive solar projects throughout Virginia. To grant a special zoning exception necessary for this project involving land productively in use agriculturally would be a terrible violation of the purpose of Virginia's statutory zoning ordinances and the county comprehensive plan, both established to protect the safety, health, and welfare of the citizens and their private property rights. There is absolutely zero benefit collectively for the citizens of the county from this project. Even though Mr. Huffman may not have been legally required to disclose the talks he was having with Sun Tribe Solar before we purchased his mother's home, he was morally obligated. We keep hearing locally people who own private property have the right to do whatever they want with their property. This is true, as long as their actions have no material adverse impact on their neighbors or the rest of those living in the community. Question: should a leaseholder, in this case, Mr. Huffman, have the right to undermine another person's peaceful enjoyment of their home? The legal answer is no. He does not have the legal right to be a knowing, casual agent of violating the private property rights of another person's peaceful use and enjoyment of their home, or degrading the scenic views of other private property owners for which they pay higher property taxes to the county, devaluing other properties, exposing others to potential adverse health effects, causing pollution and interference with county aquifers, water supply by subjecting Mill Creek, which runs into the Maury River, the James River, and the Chesapeake Bay to hazardous toxins, causing irreparable harm to the ecosystem and wildlife, negatively impacting local businesses. In closing, we rightly expect the members of the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to deny this application on the grounds not only that it violates statutory legal obligations to protect the health, safety, and welfare, but on the basis of moral right to benefit the people. Thank you.
Mitchell Davis, followed by Michelle Johnson. And if everyone could just state their name, magisterial district.
Excuse me.
Your name and magisterial district is for the record.
Mitchell Davis, South River.
Thank you.
I'm Mitchell Davis, and my family owns the land that will be surrounded by this project. Most people would agree that a solar power plant is an eyesore. The solar company says they'll hide it with plants and trees. If anybody's been there, it's rock on the surface. It's not even dirt on a lot of it. And where there is dirt, it's very thin. I know trees aren't going to grow there. If it's allowed to go through, it'll continue to be an eyesore. It's not going to be hidden. The solar company says they have studies to show the power plants don't lower property value. Well, there's studies that say they do. But common sense tells me if a person has a choice to live beside one or not, they're going to buy the land, not. So it does have an effect, negative effect. In 2019, we signed up for the Department of Agriculture's Conservation Reserve Program. And this program is to reestablish valuable land cover to help improve water quality, prevent soil erosion, and reduce the loss of wildlife habitat. Because of this program, we have a large amount of wildlife on the property. Our land is bordered on one side by Interstate 64, the other side by Lincoln Road. If this solar plant goes in, it'll block the two remaining sides, and it'll funnel deer in particular across those roads, Interstate 64 and the other. Well, that causes a hazardous situation. And because of the negative effect to property and rental values, potential health risks, negative effect on wildlife, the hazard of the deer crossing those roads, it also destroys the beauty of our area. And that's an attack on our quality of life. It's no benefit to the people of Rockbridge County, but there's a lot of negative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Johnson, followed by Robin Moore.
Michelle Johnson, Cars Creek. I'm also with the Rockbridge Taxpayers Alliance. Thank you, Commissioner Sabrizi, for taking on this task. I hope you love it afterwards. And thank you to the commissioners for the questions you've already asked. They've been thoughtful, and I really appreciate that. I want to start off by addressing this idea that people have the right to do whatever they want on their land. That does emphasize individual autonomy and private property rights, but this argument has been repeatedly made by some supervisors with the seemingly implication that these are conservative principles we all need to honor. However, this assertion overlooks other key aspects of traditional conservative thought, namely that personal freedoms must be balanced with the responsibilities one has to their community, namely the impact they're having on the neighbors, the environment, and future generations. To this end, I would ask the planning commissioners to seriously investigate some of the points I'm about to make. One, you've already investigated, and I want to thank you for that. In the application that was submitted, the point was made that this special exception that's being requested should be easily granted because the county's done it in other cases. Well, special exception is not a precedent situation. Every applicant that comes in has the burden to make the case why their proposed use should override zoning laws in the comprehensive plan. And I'm, with all due respect to the gentleman, putting some points on a PowerPoint, the headings to the comprehensive plan, to the point that Commissioner Kramer made, doesn't make a clear case about how solar panels relates to agricultural land or how solar panels protects and preserves forests. There's just not an overlap there. I don't think the case personally has been made. I would also urge the commissioners to ask whether this applicant or the parent company or Energenics has any findings from the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, especially as it pertains to stormwater and erosion control. The reason I'm asking is if this information isn't already known to the commissioners, it points to a serious need for us the county, to have an ordinance about real party of interest and for this information be made clear to you. There are things that should be known to the commissioners. And if they're not, it also points to the fact that we need an independent assessment and presentation made by the county. There's also a known issue with lead leaching off the solar panels that was acknowledged by the gentleman. This is documented, and this site does have a significant grade that ultimately drains into the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and please consider that and investigate it.
Robin Moore, followed by Bill O'Brien.
Good evening. My name is Robin Moore with the Cars Creek District. I want to thank you all for presenting some really good questions. I know a number of us have the same questions on our minds. I'm going to just follow up again with the decommissioning. My question would be that the decommissioning plan has not been made available to the public of Rockbridge County. Will we be able to make the decommissioning plan available with adequate time for public review prior to any opportunities for public comment? That would be one question. I'm on the heels of Michelle with my second concern, and that would be best management practices for stormwater and erosion and sediment control. It states that they'll be utilized as required by Rockbridge County and the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, the DEQ. My question is, how many different projects of Energix, who is the Warm Run parent company, have already been cited and fined by the Virginia DEQ for poor management practices for stormwater and erosion and sediment control? I don't know if we will be able to get answers to those questions, but they would be very helpful. And at this point in time, with so many unknowns, I would request that that we would deny the special exception for this project. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to thank you first for the opportunity to speak. My name is Bill O'Brien. I have property in South River and in Buffalo districts. Tonight, I have system engineering, agriculture supply chain, and solar array decommissioning concerns and points that I asked you to consider. My first point being system engineering, and it's multi-part. As a retired system engineer, I offer a few different things to consider. There appears to be a lack of familiarity with the proposed Warm Run solar land parcel. Any type power plant, coal, hydro, nuclear, solar, wind, the size of at least 26 football fields and maybe as many as 45 football field size, to put it in perspective. Located behind Spencer's Home Center and the Magic City Ford on Route 11, and further bounded by the intersection of the two interstates, is neither reasonable nor consonant with our community today. Second, the proposed effort to visually screen and to make it palatable makes no sense either. That parcel of land has historically been used to graze animals because cash crops, trees, and vegetation don't grow well on bedrock. In addition, the installers will have to drill or blast to establish secure foundations for the numerous solar panels. Their mounting costs to do this could quickly lead to abandonment of the proposed project. Third, I'd like to see a technical analysis by Dominion Power to ensure that this large-scale distributed energy resource project won't negatively impact the electric grid or local utility customers. I say this because Appalachian Power's recent study of Energy Renewables proposal, the parent company, to Patrick County, found that it would cause, quote, unacceptable voltage changes at the system connection point. This recently resulted in withdrawal of the Energix Renewable, what they call the Fairy Stone Solar project proposal. My second point, what I call agriculture supply chain. We're not climate change deniers. We generally believe in the need for renewable energy, but we want to have a say in how it's done to ensure it's reasonable and supportive of the rural and historic community that we chose to live in. Please consider the fact that applying this special acceptance request, approving this special acceptance request will place a substantial herd of cows that graze there now, which could adversely affect the many county businesses that make up our agricultural supply chain.
Thank you.
Steve Cantor, followed by Katie Cyrus.
Steve Cater, South River. Utility scale solar is wrong for Rockbridge County. They damage valuable soil and timberland and destroy their carbon sequestration capabilities. It doesn't make sense if we're trying to reduce carbon in the atmosphere. Besides the solar installation itself, the additional overhead transmission lines destroy trees, viewshed, and property values. This proposal stated that there's a $596,000 salvage value at decommissioning. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. They say they're going to make money when they decommission it. It's going to go in the landfill. And there's about 500 pounds of lead in these solar panels when you grind them up. I don't know who's going to deal with that. There's an increased stormwater runoff and silt, and that adds to the pollution in our waterways. And most importantly, solar photovoltaics will not significantly reduce fossil fuel use. You don't get much power per acre, and solar installations typically do not produce their rated output. The county should require that solar operators report the energy delivered from their solar panels. And I raise the question because if you've been out to the Holocene project, it's not functioning. I don't know how long it's been there, but it's not generating any power. Since sunlight is intermittent, you must have a way to quickly get power from somewhere when the demand is high, but the solar output is low. So you have to either have very large batteries, hydroelectric storage, fossil fuel powered generators, or nuclear plants. There's no way around that. Bottom line is we're simply not going to replace fossil fuel generated electricity with solar photovoltaics. It's a myth to think that this solar generated power is going to power any of Rockbridge County. It's going to enter the grid and it's going to go to wherever the demand is the greatest. The demand is the greatest in the big cities, especially Northern Virginia, where they have built over 300 data centers in the last 10 years. And these things are tremendously power hungry. That's what they're going to use the power for. We've talked about restricting solar to industrial districts, and people have objected. But when you take farmland and build a solar array over it, you've made it into a de facto industrial district. Whether it can be returned to agricultural use is doubtful. But even if you can, it's going to remain an industrial site as long as the solar array is there. So the bottom line is that utility scale solar is wrong for Rockbridge County. And in a couple of decades, our kids are going to ask us, when they look at the mess that we've made, what were you thinking? And our honest answer would be, we thought we were averting an environmental catastrophe, but we just made it worse.
Thank you,
Thanks
Mr.
for your
Cater.
time.
Thank you.
And thanks for serving the community. Appreciate it.
I think it's Katie Cyrus. Thank you. Followed by Bob Ferrandez.
You got it right. It is Katie Cyrus, and I'm in the Walkers Creek district. So I'm in favor of responsibly sited solar projects, and I think that Warm Run is one. When I think about projects that are well sited, I think about balancing energy, the environment, and the community. The Virginia Clean Economy Act essentially mandates that Dominion generates energy through 100% renewable resources by 2045. Further, renewable energy reduces our reliance on fossil fuels and helps limit global warming and climate change. A 3-megawatt project strikes a good balance between the need for electrical generation and the scale it's generated at. This is a less than 50-acre site, not a 1,500-acre site like you see across the state. Also, a well-sited project avoids and minimizes impacts to natural resources, our wetlands, our native flora and fauna, and our natural habitats. Warm Run is sited in previously disturbed agricultural land. It is not a natural landscape. Further, wetlands are voided and a natural buffer is maintained around them at this site. A well-sited project also avoids and minimizes impacts to and benefits the local community. This project is sited in near an area that the comprehensive plan describes as predominantly commercial corridor and a prime candidate for future commercial related activities. So that's in reference to Route 11, I-81, and I-64. I think this project is therefore in line with the comprehensive plan. In an area where we're already seeing accelerated development, the project not only fits in with the landscape, but also keeps the land as agricultural transitional during the life of the project. When it's decommissioned, it could be returned to agricultural purposes. One point that was on the PowerPoint that hasn't really been talked about is the use of native grasses and pollinator species. So there are a lot of benefits. I'm an ecologist. There are a lot of benefits to that, especially compared to the current land use. Pollinator habitat is not only aesthetically pleasing, it also provides enhanced erosion and sediment control because of the deep-rooted systems compared to like a turf or a pasture. It also increases biodiversity, provides habitat for our native pollinators and fauna. The use of that woven wire will allow small mammals and other smaller wildlife to be able to go in and out of the site compared to chain link fence. And it also helps rest. It does. So actually, native grasses and pollinator species are considered a form of agrivoltaics, which is agricultural plus solar, because what it does is it allows the land to rest for the approximately 30 to 40 years of the project. So more nutrients, increased carbon sequestration. So I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Fernandez, followed by Bob Bursack.
Yes, sir. Bob Fernandez. We just recently moved to Rockbridge County, literally 2 weeks ago today. And I heard about this, and we came from Orange County, which is Spotsylvania has the wonderful 3,500 acre solar farm that is conveniently right on the border of Orange County. So when they built it, Spotsylvania got the benefits, they get the tax money. Orange County got all the mess. The roads were destroyed. Still, the access roads are still a mess in there. We have to look at it. Then they put a smaller farm on Route 20 and we're going to hide it. Well, that's fine, except like they said, who's going to maintain the bushes? Half of them are dead. You drive down 20, you see wonderful big solar panels. My one that when he came here tonight, I was wondering, what's the lifespan? I know usually it's 25 years-ish for solar panels. When he said 40 years, so $460,000 benefit to the county, over 40 years leaves you a whopping $11,500 a year. You can work at Burger King part-time and make more money than that as far as a benefit. And then you'd have somebody with a job and they'd be paying taxes to the county. We moved here to get away from that craziness. And when I heard about this, I was like, oh, I got to say something, just because having been there, done that type of thing, I prefer it didn't happen here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Bursack, followed by Donald Hinkie, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Bob Biersack. I live in the Cars Creek District. I'm also the president of the board of directors of Rockbridge Conservation. Some of the old folks here remember it as RAC, Rockbridge Area Conservation Council. We have a 50-year history of being concerned about conservation in this area, preservation of the natural beauty and the cultural richness that is here. And we believe that responsible solar arrays of this type can facilitate that process and can preserve the things that we so much value. We have an obligation to participate in the process of managing and mitigating the climate change that's happening around us. We created it. We have a responsibility to try to mitigate it. And this is part of that process. It's something that we can do now. It's not something that's a prospective, a possible solution in the future. It's something that happens today. But it's got to be responsible in a place like this. Responsibility for us means you're not going to clear cut, you're not going to log in to develop these things. You're not going to do it on steep slopes. You're going to minimize the grading process as much as possible. It means you're going to avoid soil compaction. Soil compaction is one of the big problems in these kinds of construction of these facilities. But if you minimize it up front and you reduce it at the decommissioning process, then you can actually make improvements to the soil. We know that. We've seen studies. We've seen it happen over time. The fact that you're using native plants and pollinators encourages that development and that improvement of the soil. This land 40 years from now will be much better off than it is today. It'll be much more productive and much more useful in agricultural terms if you do these kinds of steps in the process. The fact that the decommissioning is fully funded and those bonds are secure is an important part of this process. The fact that they describe the way they would decommission by removing the materials and not just leaving the footers in place is an important step in that direction as well. All of those things, along with its natural siting, it's between two interstate highways, which by the way, in their development have changed the nature of this place over the last 40 years in pretty significant ways. One of the greatest threats to the preservation of the rural aspects of this community over time may well be that people from places like the tidal areas in Virginia and further south are going to need to move because the water levels are going to be higher. And where are they going to go? They're going to come to places like this where the climate impacts are mitigated to some extent. We need to be considerate of that too. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Don Henke from Walker District. I guess the first comment is nobody wants to look at this stuff. There's not anybody sitting in this room who would love to have this something to look at in the morning when they get up for a cup of coffee. So that'd be the first place I'd start with this. If you want the kind of progress that we tend to think is religion in this world we live in, we need to put this stuff where you don't have to look at it. There's hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of acres of ground west of the Mississippi River where you can stick a solar power facility and nobody will even go there and look at it, let alone have to sit by while they're looking at it. And they say, well, we don't have the transmission lines to build solar power facilities west of the Mississippi and get it east of the Mississippi. But that's a phony excuse. We've been building infrastructure to move electricity since the 19th century. And it's a lot easier to build a solar power plant somewhere where nobody has to look at it and transport the electricity to people that can use it than it is to have to go through upsetting the lives of people that want their view shed preserved because that's why they bought their property in the first place, and having arguments about whether or not we should have an object like this in our own view shed. So asking these companies to get out of Rockbridge County, which is known for its scenery, and move to the middle of the New Mexico desert is a more practical solution to the overall problem of having people have to put up with this. Thanks.
Chris Burma, followed by Skylar Zonk. That's it. You're on. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Chris Bauman, Walker's Creek. I've been before some of you before. In my prior life, I was a tax attorney, and I'm not practicing now. I'm still a member in good standing of the bar, but not the Virginia bar. And you may ask, and people here may ask, why is a tax attorney here on this issue? Because this is all about taxes. And with all respect, my friends from the environmental community, I have supported RAC financially. I have lent my expertise to RAC. This has nothing to do with solar. This is about taxes. The Inflation Reduction Act that was passed created a tax credit bonanza. It is a $1 billion industry. You are asking exactly the right questions. The conditions, the terms. There is nobody in this room that is going to be responsible for that. These LLCs will sell these rights off, these credits off as soon as it's profitable for them. They can turn around in 10 years, make all their money back and still have that asset sitting on them. What's wrong with that? It means none of our conditions, none of our regulations, none of our statutes work with this industry because they don't care about solar. They don't care about the business. They don't care about generation. They care about their tax credits. And once they get them, they're gone. Once this thing has been sold 4 times, we're not going to be able to figure out who they are. You heard the county attorney, Mr. Dryden, talk about, oh, we'd have to go after them through litigation. We're not going to be able to go after them. They're going to be Delaware LLCs. We don't have the resources as a county to even find out who they are, let alone litigate against them. But I would like to talk very quickly about something you asked. You asked them, this is their A team here. They're here to sell you on this. You said, hey, tell us about the last time there was a decommissioning. We don't know anything about it, but let's get another guy up here. There's a robust market for these decommissioned parts. Well, if there's no decommissioning, where did that robust market come from? Okay, it doesn't exist. This is car salesman gimmicks. This is a generational decision. There are kids that have not had children yet. They're going to have to live with these consequences. Do you want to be in business with these people? Do you want your children in business with these people? They are here to get tax credits and get out of here. They are not part of this community. They are not your constituents, and they are not here to help us. I'm all for solar. This isn't about solar. There is nobody who has a vested interest in keeping this thing running or producing energy. It doesn't matter to them. This is about federal tax credits, deductions, and a couple other specialized portions out there. So I would ask right now, what do you guys do? Well, you got 3 reasons to say no to this. Impact on character of the district, you've already heard about that. The welfare of the public, you've already heard from the majority of the people here, how it will impact them, and the comprehensive plan, as you asked about, Commissioner. Comprehensive plan's in. This does not meet it. You have all that you need. Any one of those is a strike and it's gone. They've hit all 3. Say goodbye to them, vote them down. Thank you for your time. I'll stand for any questions.
Skylar Zonk, followed by Angela Watkins.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Skylar Zunk, and I'm here on behalf of Energy Right. It's been a few years since I've been able to call Rockbridge County home, but it's great to be back with you this evening. Energy Right's a nonprofit based right here in Virginia, and my team of 5 travels across 70 plus counties in Virginia, helping to talk to folks at the local level about clean energy. Our tagline is clean energy the right way. Clean energy is happening in Virginia. It's coming to Virginia. We need to make sure we go into these decisions with eyes wide open and with the proper land use practices in mind. We also try to add a conservative voice to this conversation. My colleagues and I come from a background in conservative politics, campaigns, and government service. We think we absolutely need to be talking about conservative principles when we are talking about clean energy development. Also, am the proud appointee of Governor Youngkin to the Virginia Solar Energy Development Authority. I can tell you very honestly that every other county in the Commonwealth is dealing with these proposals and these challenges as we work to power our grid with increasingly clean energy. And before I talk about Warm Run, I want to commend the County Planning Commission, Board, and your Solar Committee on putting together the robust solar ordinance that you all are about to consider. It's great to see the Solar Committee undergoing this work and placing guidelines that are much needed on these projects. And I want to thank county staff for attending a tour of a solar facility with our friends down in Roanoke County. We're very grateful to come up to Rockbridge to learn how it's done properly. The way we are powering Virginia is changing. The way we power our homes and businesses is increasingly moving to more clean and renewable energy sources like solar. Right now in Virginia, we're importing 1/3 of every electron that we're using to power these lights right now because we don't have enough power capacity to power our own homes and businesses. We rely on our neighboring states to do that. In order for our economy to grow, we need to develop and generate more energy right here in the Commonwealth. Solar is by far and away, whether you measure with tax subsidies or in an unsubsidized analysis, the cheapest way to generate a new electron on the grid. You build it once, it's producing clean electricity with very little inputs for the long term. This is a very small project. I'm the adjoining property owner of a project 100 times this size. My family, my community was very happy to see a solar project come in to be our neighbor for the next 40 years rather than 1,000 houses. Property rights is absolutely important, and it's important in this conversation. George Washington said that freedom and property rights are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. We need to give due deference to the landowner while being respectful of the neighbors and with adequate setbacks and buffers this very small project will bring. I think this is a win for Rockbridge County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Angela Watkins, followed by Trip Olney.
Angela Watkins, and I'm in the Natural Bridge District. And first of all, I'd like to thank Warm Run Solar for their presentation and for your listening to it and for your questions. And I've learned a lot. I'm here as a curious by listener. And I've heard everything from taxes to views to whatever. But I guess my questions have to be, what happened when when Interstates 81 and Interstate 64 were proposed, that we're going to cut through farmland, laying yards and yards of asphalt and concrete, and had to cut out right of ways and lay drainage systems. And of course, it just took up a lot of land. Also, people who moved here. I think there was some hullabaloo about the Natural Bridge Speedway. Well, the Speedway was already there. So they should have realized that before they moved here. And I would ask questions about people who are building houses, moving here and building houses. They built on farmland. And the subdivisions that are here have McMansions in them. As far as aesthetics, some people might argue that some of those houses are not very attractive to look at. What about the previous electricity plants powered by coal and nuclear energy? What were the objections to those? Ugliness, I think that the Fairfield Solar Project is not ugly. I think viewed in the proper perspective, you can see it in much like any kind of art, modern art, ancient art. Yeah. Any questions about pasture? I have read that goats very well coexist with solar fields. And first of all, really, somebody might ask, well, why should Rockbridge County be agricultural? The interstates come through, taking people to other places. Why can't we be a little more progressive? Is there jealousy that someone stands to make some money off of solar rent on their land? It just depends on who you're asking. There's some land in this county that was inherited, that hasn't been farmed for 70 years. There are no heirs to the landowner. They may have a different viewpoint and a different use for something than people who now have a farm and they're trying to preserve it for their descendants. And that's so I am in favor of two things. Please don't pass laws and ordinances that say that people can't choose to have something on their own land. And also, well, I guess this is my time, so.
Thank you.
Yes.
Trip Olney, followed by Russell Monahan.
Evening, I'm Trip Elmy, Carrs Creek Magisterial District. I've actually had a completely different statement prepared. But after hearing the word assumption and the word assume multiple times during this meeting, I've actually changed the entire and scratched that. I'm not going to address specifically Warm Run. I'm not going to address some of the comments that have been made so far with regard to clean energy, climate change, and so on. But I really want to address the comprehensive plan in the solar ordinance and the difficulty that you have as commissioners in trying to make the recommendation or deny the special use application. Since neither the recently adopted comprehensive plan nor the draft solar ordinance, and that's a draft solar ordinance, include a specific stated plan for allowing industrial scale solar plants on agricultural land in Rockbridge County, I ask you, Planning Commission members, what exactly are you using to guide your decision-making regarding industrial scale solar plants? Secondly, what balance tests are you evaluating as you consider special use exemptions for industrial scale solar plants on agricultural land? Application of a true balance test, as Commissioner Kramer alluded to earlier, is crucial in weighing the unique factors associated with each exemption application. And based upon what we've observed over the last couple of years now, regarding the piecemeal granting of industrial scale solar plants by special use exemption, is really no plan at all. And in fact, it subverts the comprehensive plan. Thanks.
Russell Monahan, followed by Jill Monahan.
Name is Robert Monahan. I apologize for my terrible handwriting. It's not a Russell. And while I vote every election, I'm ashamed to admit I do not know my district. But I do live in East Lexington. I frequently walk along Mill Creek on Lincoln Road. I see great blue heron in there, fox, deer. Having that array up on that hillside is going to affect that creek. And solar is an empty promise. I have them on my house. They're fine on a small scale, but as a large scale answer to our energy problems, it is not a solution. Virginia's energy problems are shared by the other states in the mid-Atlantic and also in the Northeast. Virginia is burdened with Washington, D.C., and the large number of data centers used by the federal government and private companies. And their energy demand is growing exponentially. The other factor in all this is the growth of AI, which is a huge power drain. This little project here is not going to solve any problems. It's going to create more of them. I hope that you gentlemen do not vote in favor of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill Monahan, followed by Steve Hart.
Hi, I'm Jill Monahan. I live off of Lincoln Road. And I wanted to address the notion that this land will be better after 40 years of leaching heavy metals and chemicals onto that land. The very best use and renewal of any land, and it's being employed in the desertified areas of Africa, is to employ the use of cows. As they poop and pee and pull apart the grass with their hooves, these nutrients are renewed and renewed and renewed. They are turning sandy areas in Africa into rich, fertile areas that can be farmed by the residents there. And the notion that this land will support pollinators and flora and fauna as though it's some Garden of Eden is a falsehood in the extreme. It will spend 30 to 40 years leaching onto the land, into the aquifer. And I find it hard to believe that pollinators are excited about that. I'm certainly not. And I'll be drinking that water. And I don't want to do that either. It's going to make an environmental wreckage of that plot of land, and it's going to seep into the aquifer and affect all of us, flora and fauna? I don't think so. I hope you vote unanimously to reject this wreckage. Thank you.
Steve Hart, followed by Bill Russell.
Steve Hart, Cars Creek. Here's a stack of articles about problems in Virginia and other places with solar fields. When the money dries up and the big company leaves, the local people are left holding the bag. It's happened all sorts of other places. It can happen here. Not saying it will, but it can. We get all the downside. I'd like to address some of the comments. It says this facility is temporary. No, it's not. It's permanent. It'll be here when 90% of the people in this room are dead. It says other uses are more permanent. I'm sorry, I've been waiting to use this line. I was a combat engineer for 26 years. My job was to make permanent things go away. It's not actually that hard. Nothing is permanent. We can make it go away. But in this case, if this stuff is so good, why would we make it go away? Dominion's own report says their power demand is going to double in the next 15 years. If their power demand doubles, why would you take something out of production that's producing power? So that part, this claim that it's temporary doesn't make sense. The return to ag land is a fallacy. If you're going to grade stuff, you're going to destroy the agricultural soil. I bought out a farm that was a played out hay farm. I've been working on that thing for 8 years. I got about half the land. It's decent. It's not good. It's just decent. I'm still working on the other half. At the same time, right across the street from my farm, a solar field was built. You can come out there today and I will put my farm up against any presentation, no, not presentation, actual performance of a solar field. Look at the depth of my grass. Look at the water retention on the farm. Look at the pollinator habit. Look at the biodiversity on my farm compared to the solar field across the street. You can also see what it looks like 8 years after the screenings are planted. We have a track record. We have something we can look at. Finally, we're getting rid of farmland all over the place. Central Valley in California, where we get a lot of food from, is drying up. They're depleting their aquifer. The Ogallala Aquifer in the central part of the United States has been overpumped for years. We here in Virginia have a great climate. We have water. Well, mostly it was a drought year, but mostly time we have water, right? We have climate, we have soil, we have all of these things that can grow things. But even in Virginia, we're getting rid of farmland all over the place. Maybe, just maybe, somebody has the foresight to preserve some farmland. It's going to be pretty valuable in the future because we all eat 3 times a day. Last thing, Virginia Clean Economy Act. If you want to produce in 2038 the energy for Virginia for one day with solar panels in December, it takes 3,360 square miles plus storage, plus transmission, plus distribution. That's 1/3 of the farmland in the United States. I can do the math for you. We have bought a pig in a poke and we've not put numbers to it, so we can't actually have a discussion. Thank you.
Bill Russell, followed by Paul Herman.
Bill Russell, Cars Creek, Mr. Chairman, members. I've heard a couple things, and I'm going to skip what I was going to talk about to start with. I heard something about panels not being what they may or may not use. So you've got an application before you that does not cite the kind of panels that go on there. They're a subsidiary of Intergex. Intergex is known for using thin film panels with cadmium in, a highly toxic material that can leach into the creek, into the Chesapeake Bay. We talked about finding people to serve. Intergex is a subsidiary of Intergex USA in Delaware, which is a subsidiary of an Israeli conglomerate, Aloni Hetz. You would have to go a long way to find who this is. But I'm going to go back to Intergex for a minute. They have a practice of building small facilities and large facilities in this state. This is a full small facility. What they've done with the small facilities is bundle them and sell them, take the tax credits before they sell them. It was mentioned that the tax rates were going to be X amount per year for this when it was built. Actually, the tax rates are going to be, the appraisal is going to be offset by 80% the first 5 years and 70% in the next 5 years. So you're not going to get a whole lot of money back on that. The mention of conservative thought on property really got to me because one of my areas of study in particular in law school was traditional property value and the common law and the developing statutory law as it is extended out of the new emerging states. And I can cite those conservative principles being that you respect your neighbor's property, and that extends from Edmund Burke, Oliver Wendell Holmes, John Locke. All of those, their writings make clear that a conservative view of property rights is, yes, you have a right to use your property as you would like, but you must, for civil society's sake, respect not diminishing the rights of the neighbor's property for their use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Paul Herman.
Good evening, Paul Herman. I believe I'm in the South River District. My comments are mainly questions for the board here. It's my understanding that PFAS, if you don't know what PFAS is, it's a really nasty chemical. They're used in the solar panels on the outer layers to make them more durable. My concern is that if PFAS are used on the panels that are proposed, how does that material leach or run off the solar panels onto the ground, into the groundwater, down into the creeks, into the river, out to the Chesapeake Bay? So that's a question that you all can ask the solar company. Secondly, solar panels are impervious surfaces. I don't know how Rockbridge County's Chesapeake Bay Act requirements look, but this is a 50-acre parcel that doesn't have a whole lot of buffer zones around it to manage 50 acres of impervious surface. So something else you need to consider. And lastly, earlier discussions talked about the maintenance of the trees and plantings that they might have. A 6-foot tree, you said, would be planted and they'd have to make sure it grows up and everything like that over the years. Does the county have the resources to actively inspect and enforce those requirements in the future, not for just this solar project, but any other solar project that might have those kinds of requirements? Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Hey, Joe Walter.
My name is Edward Showalter.
The mic.
Excuse me, sir. Can you hear that better?
Yes.
Okay, I'll start over. My name is Edward Showalter. Live in South River District. I've lived there for 71 years, except for the time when I was in college for 6 years. I live at the end of Warm Run Road, which is a dirt road. I actually maintain it more than the State Department does, but that's neither here nor there. That's not why I'm here. My property adjoins the Huffman property, which is the proposed location of the solar that's being discussed now. And I do know that property very well. I also know it probably has no more than 2 feet of topsoil on top of limestone ledges over the entire farm. Also, just down the road, that being Lincoln Road, about 3/10 of a mile. On the easterly side, there is an existing quarry that remains from where gravel and rock and stone was mined, but if you want to call it that, but obtained to build Interstate 81 and part of Interstate 64. I also know that quarry very well because I did a checkout scuba dive in it in April. And let's just say it was rather chilly taking a swim in April and doing so. And that had gathered about 30 feet of water and wasn't even half full. But regardless, there is very, very little topsoil or what I would consider to be good farming land in Rockbridge County. Any of that which exists lies along river bottoms. And that is because erosion brought that better soil in, covered up the rock, the stone, the soil, the clay, go up on top of the hill where that soil came from. You're doing good to get a plow to go into that sod. And I will end that with, I sincerely hope that you study this very well, and I hope that you decide to deny this project.
Thank you.
That is everyone that signed up to speak, but recognize anybody this time?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name's Eric Sheffield. I live in South River District. I'm not a neighbor of this property being discussed, but I do drive by it on Lincoln Road fairly often. I'm very pleased to see that there are so many people who are concerned with preserving the beauty of Rockbridge County. I count myself in that category. However, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. From the simulated views in the detailed application, it looks like I'll have to try pretty hard to see any part of this installation. But when I do, I'll see better energy independence for our community, steady income for the landowner and county, lower taxes, and a better future for our grandchildren. Everyone in this room uses electricity, and chances are that we'll be using even more in the future. We need to take some personal responsibility and not just say we want our electricity to come from somewhere else. I'm guessing that given the options of siting coal, gas, nuclear, wind, or solar in Rockbridge, that most of us would pick solar. It's perfectly reasonable to ask where the best locations are for placing these facilities, but it's not responsible or prudent to say we don't need any. Rockbridge County has very little flat land with public water and sewer, and therefore very little land zoned industrial. It would be a waste of that scarce resource to site facilities that don't need flat land, water, or sewer. I've been around long enough to remember the uproar that came when companies wanted to put cell towers all over the place. And I've read about similar upheaval when automobiles first started using our local roads. In the end, most of us decided that the benefits of these new technologies outweighed the negative aspects. Unlike many other kinds of development, one good thing about solar panels is that it is a light use that can be fairly easily removed if not deeded, or the landowner decides on other uses for their property. Thank you for listening, and I commend you in your deliberations to find the best way forward, keeping Rockbridge beautiful, respecting private property rights, keeping taxes low, and securing the best future for the children of Rockbridge.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else physically present who would like to make comments?
Lee Merrill, currently in Walker's Creek. Congratulations on hearing this, and you've heard differing opinions on almost every point. So it's going to be very difficult for you to ascertain where a balanced truth lies. And I fully support the comments that were just made by Mr. Sheffield, Mr. Biersack, the ecologist in the back. I also am sympathetic to a neighbor or two who can in fact see this and will have change thrust upon them in a pretty low impact way that I don't think, having driven around the site, tried to get to the prominent places. I'm not sure where these folks, the Huffman's house was. If you wanted to find an invisible site in Rockbridge County, this is pretty close to it. And the screening, which has to be, I think conditions have to be very explicit about the point that this needs, they need to thrive, and it needs to be inspected, and it needs to be enforced. But I would just close my comment, which is in support of when you're ready and when you think with enough conditions that you can push it forward to the supervisors or not, but the supervisors ultimately have to make this decision upon your guidance. And I just would close with an observation that's pertinent to our times. It's a lot easier to be fearful of change than it is to be clear in looking at the facts and the reality of the situation and really see where the balance is for the benefits of this community for the next 100 or 200 years. The soils will be fine. There's science to support that there's hardly any appreciable pollution going into the watershed from this kind of a project. And I could go down through all these points. I'm not going to do it, but because I think I'm going to have to regroup and think how to make a presentation that's more thoughtful to the supervisors. But I think that they deserve the opportunity to make an unbiased opinion of this too. But you're going to have to weigh judgment. And I would ask you to try and look at the truth of each one of these points, where the real science lays. And I think you may well find upon reflection that you can support this particular project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Kuzamana from the Rockbridge area. I was reading some material that these people have written. Then they said that 46,000 for Rockbridge over that Rockbridge we would make over the life and the project in return for adversely affecting the life and the health and the adjoining property. That's what they said. So they must know that there's some adverse effects to this project. The other thing is they said about having a construction traffic manager plan will be developed and submitted to Rockbridge County for review during the site plan approval process. You've already let the cart before the horse. You have to do it before, not after. So they need to have a traffic manager as part of the plan of the application package and made available for public review. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, last call. Anyone else? All right, we will now take comments via computer and phone. Chris, do we have anybody?
Yes, if Miss Judy Oliver, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I assume you all can hear me now. So I really appreciate this. I've been learning more about solar over the past few weeks with these various meetings that we've had. And I must admit that I also don't know, where the true facts and the true science lies. And I don't think that any of us do as we sit and listen to all of these different concerns. There's a couple of things that we do know. One thing we know is that it will very much impact those the adjoining neighbors. And so the citizens that already live here, their quality of life will be impacted negatively by this industrial, business, if you will, if this permit is given. But the other thing that really concerns me is that we're literally in the process right now of deciding what will be our solar strategy. What are the guidelines? What are the conditions? What are the important environmental assessments? What are the important guarantees that we need to put into place before we approve any new solar project? And so given that we're at that place and there's so many unknowns and so many risks, and the shocking fact for me, I about fell out of my chair here, was that we're talking about a 30-year commitment. So we're being asked to make a 30-year commitment with a bunch of unknowns. We know that it will impact the neighbors. And we also know, as one of my neighbors just said earlier, that this really is contrary to the priority top goals of the comprehensive plan that we just approved. So as a community, we have consistently said that our number one priority is to preserve the cultural and forestal land and the natural rural beauty of this county. And solar installations are not consistent with that priority goal. And so before we take a 30-year commitment that we know is inconsistent with one of our top priorities, it seems really wise that we should be doing all of the research and like the gentleman before me said, making sure that we've got the clear facts and the real certainties before we sign on to a 30-year commitment with so many different unknowns. We also don't know what the commissioning plan is going to be. Imagine making a 30 to 40-year commitment without knowing how they're going to clean up the mess when it's done, or who's actually going to be legally responsible for it at the end of the day. And so for me, I'm clearly against this. I'm not necessarily against solar as a technology. I think that there's a lot that we still need to learn about it. But this is a question today of, is this the right place? And not just this one single plot of land, but is Rockbridge County, whose number one priority is to be the area of the county where we're preserving agriculture, where we are advancing agriculture for the benefit of the rest of the state and indeed even outside of our states. And so knowing this is inconsistent, I just say we need to say no to this now until we have more answers, till we've gone through our entire delineation of concerns and decisions, so that we have an intentional ordinance, a strategy that's going to guide our decisions, so that we're not making piecemeal 30-year commitment decisions without all of the data and the research that we need. And I apologize, I forgot to say that I am from South River District. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, do we have anyone else?
Bear with me here. I got to change the door schedule to make sure it keeps unlocked after 9:30. Going back to Zoom. If anyone else is online and they'd like to make a comment during the public hearing comments, please raise your hand button now. Not seeing any, turn full back over to the chair.
Okay. This is time for our internal discussion, or ask the applicant more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, yes, the applicant will be able to come back up and
Yes.
yes.
Can we take a break and close the public hearing?
Yes, well, the request is to take a short break. Can we do that and leave the hearing open, or do we need to go ahead and close it?
That you could do either one, I think would be.
The purpose of leaving the hearing open is to have further comments from the public, not necessarily. from the
Okay,
petitioner.
okay.
So that's up to you. Yeah.
I think we'll go ahead and close the public hearing for the time being and take a short 5-minute break. That's all right.
Sounds great.
Do you need a motion or anything?
I'd just say you close public hearing. Close. Okay.
Yep. You think your dad wasn't gonna tell me that?
Girl dad for life. Yeah.
Yes. I don't believe so, but I'm uncertain. No, I'm not sure. Tom was Mr. Dr. Beebe a local?
Yes, he was.
I'm not,
And his son went to
I don't believe it. No, that definitely wasn't it, because I could remember he did not go down. I think Tom grew up in Maryland area. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Fair enough. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, no, absolutely. If you don't have it, let me know. Yeah, but usually, I would be surprised if it goes in junk. Usually my stuff doesn't go in junk, but it might be. I could have, but. Have you? Yeah, I just told them you won't get to buy it. So what do you think? 10:30? Oh, yeah, this area. But I wouldn't say it'd be nothing. I came back, but I'd already.
Amazing. Listen to this.
That's a lot more laid back, but I'm always learning something. Yeah, and I do and he actually bought a house out on Lake assets. And my boss hooked me up here to save what the house is. Kind of happy with me. But they hit the Charlottesville Harrisburg, back
That's the nice thing about the smaller regional banks.
This is a culture shock because I had never done it. I've been thinking that 20 years.
Yeah, that's a big.
So when the boss, me and my boss talk about everything else, blood thing, it's like I don't have. I'm part of myself enough. He tells me to lay low, relax. So I finally retired. I mean, my
Years ago, my wife thought it was 1 year.
What year was that? This would have been brief. My aunt retired there. Oh, really? 30 plus years.
What's your last name?
Hey, Burns.
No, they had like a county program where she got half a day, half a day.
Oh, she would have been there. Yeah.
No, because we don't have a motion.
Had a daughter. I'm gonna give accessory too.
In that farming area and stuff, I know how Augusta County marketing is
like the whole school's problem.
well, I went to fair.
Okay. But it's dropping, and I thought population dropping or not?
It's an Asian population.
And
Yeah.
they would go there.
Chris Paul never said.
No, I got it. And this we can get these. Don't we have a bigger stack of these? Oh, it's just a stack. How many you make?
I mean, right now. You want me to go? Yeah. The printer wasn't working. I got they could take action. They could take action. They could take action. They could take motion postpone things. September 11th meeting. I have that.
I'm not satisfied. Whatever you guys yeah. Oh.
We're just chew this down to Sorry to interject in the middle of it. I was trying to help you guys. I was trying to, when you were asking a question, I was trying to help guide them in the right. Okay, that's what he's doing. He's just. I knew it was things, but then I had. That's good. It's a good tactic.
Okay, folks.
Get started.
Oh,
no, this one, if public hearing is closed. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get started again, folks.
Properties. That's what I told him. He said, you know, I did my homework.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get started again, so it's not midnight before we get out of here. So we'll bring it back to the members here, and if we have any questions that we want to ask of the applicants or the county folks, now's your time.
And it's always proper to have the applicant come back up to respond to some of the questions and concerns.
Sure.
And then also some of them are better addressed by staff. So I'll let y'all.
Sure, and you may answer some questions we have just by addressing what you heard.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Hi, I'm John Townsend. I'm a fellow developer with Siler at Sun Tribe. So I just want to touch on two things, and then I'll let Tyler handle some of the rest. So for starters, I appreciate the feedback, the opposing and the supportive views from the community. I will say it's really disheartening to hear some of the blatant misinformation come out. And what I really want to hammer home and on public record is the fabrication that Sun Tribe has any affiliation with Intergex. There is zero connection to that company. They're based in DC. We don't work with them. We never have. I haven't actually heard that claim in years. That actually was born on social media in a YouTube video like 5 or 6 years ago. So again, just unequivocally, I'm sorry, we can share the org documents. Like we're not hiding anything in relation to that. So again, I just being very candid with you all, that doesn't exist. The other question I wanted to touch base on was just there were a lot of questions about taxation and the IRA, and I just want to sort of highlight that all energy sources in America are subsidized in some form by taxation by the federal government. It's considered a public good, so it doesn't matter if it's coal, natural gas, nuclear, wind, solar. It is considered to be an economic driver for the country, and so that exists in all the different industries there. There was one specific question that came up earlier, and I wanted to touch on about property taxes going into default. And I just wanted to sort of remind the group that the facility itself earns revenue. It is in their best interest from an investor perspective to continue to keep the facility operational to recoup their investment. So the project is responsible to pay the property taxes that would change as part of if it was approved, special exception permit. And sort of in the same vein as that, if the project were to change hands, even to someone like Dominion, all of the agreements with the landowner, the county, Dominion Energy to purchase the power, if that's what happens, or the interconnection to tie into the existing grid would all transfer. They're all legally binding documents that would go with the project. As Chris mentioned, the lease runs with the land in Virginia. So there'd be no difference in the project, the way it looked, the way it behaved, or any sort of other adjustments that weren't already agreed upon by the county. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Tyler, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
As John was saying, with the proposed conditions and how they follow the project ownership entity, I also wanted to speak to something that Mr. Sabrizi brought up with the conceptual plan and the landscape plan, which has been kind of talked about in the public comments. This is what's being proposed for the project. And as part of the conceptual site plan and as part of the proposed conditions, the project is going to be held to what is submitted. And so if there's a portion, if there's a portion of that landscape plan that is not consistent with that, and the project would be in violation of the SCP. I wanted to touch on that. There were a lot of scary claims during the public hearing about groundwater or leaching, things of that nature. I'm going to reiterate what I said during the presentation, which is these panels are safe. They're not a health hazard, and they are not an environmental or groundwater hazard. They do not leach anything, even in the worst case scenarios. And we've provided the studies to support that with the application document, whether that's the North Carolina State study or the study from the Department of Energy in Massachusetts. Somebody mentioned PFAS or PFAS, and those are not used in panels anymore. There has been alternative, non-toxic, technology that has been standard practice for years at this point. In terms of decommissioning, it was brought up a couple of times, and I just want to reiterate that the project is required by state law, by legally binding agreements, and has the financial surety to be removed at the end of the project life. And the net positive financials that were discussed as part of the salvage value were just representative of the first years 1 to 5 before that decommissioning plan is refreshed, showing that those modules can be repurposed. I'll end by just speaking to some of the view shed concerns. Anyone who might have a very small view of this project is also going to be looking at the associated views around the project, whether that's the interstates, Route 11, the Ford dealership, Lowe's, Walmart, the hotel, all of those other uses. And all of those uses, contrary to the solar project, have lights and very, very tall infrastructure associated with it. I'm going to end this time by reading a letter that was submitted by, just a very small portion of this letter that was submitted by the nephew and part of the trustee group, owners of the property. And the letter reads, "While the views of my family's property by others is not a guaranteed right, the thoughtful design of the Warm Run project does reflect our desire to limit viewshed impacts so that our 150-year legacy as landowners continues to demonstrate the care and respect we have for our land and our neighbors. And I can answer any questions as well.
Thank you.
Back to the first point, and I think it's an important one,
Tony, if you could use your mic,
sorry,
please.
the buffers, the
Yes,
buffer
sir.
areas.
Yep.
There. I mean, you had I think in the plan, there was I don't remember the name of the company that you had do this.
Timmons Group.
Right.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, and I heard some of these comments, and having walked the ground is, the ability to even come close to what you got. And obviously that would not be something that would be, I'll say, binding to you, is the maturity of the trees and the heights at maturity. I think well, it's just typical. So again, that'd be something we really couldn't do. But I guess the concern I continue to have is that there's going to be problems in actually putting this buffer in and maintaining. And I just, did they visit the site, Timmons? Were they there? Did they dig holes? Did they?
Timmons has been on site. You and I walked the site together. I don't think that there's any question that there are sometimes small portions of the vegetative buffer that have bedrock under it. And we talked about it in the field. I think that the project is committing to what is in the conceptual site plan, and that's what the SEP is for. So the project during construction and implementation of that vegetative buffer is going to do everything to make sure that the vegetative buffer is as stated, whether that means that they might have to vary species a little bit to make sure that it's going to hold. The vegetative buffer will be, to the extent possible, exactly as the conceptual site plan shows, or it's, my understanding is that that's in violation of the permit.
It could be considered that, yes.
But right now, in the way I would interpret this concept plan is the only thing that's a commitment is the height of the plants when they're planted. I mean, that's what I'm saying. This goes back to the, how we can condition on that. Is that something we need to add, or can I?
The height and location.
I'm saying right now, as far as it's what you told me at the beginning here, that what was part of that plan, the only thing that I can kind of there is that the kinds and the types and kinds of things that you're going to plant, and its size at planting,
as well as the location of the vegetative buffer.
If I may, again, John Townsend with Sun Tribe. It's a valid point, Mr. Zabrisi. So Timmons is aware of the potential shallow topsoil depths there, and the project is, by presenting this, agreeing to an obligation to maintain that vegetative buffer. So obviously that some of that is plant selection for the buffer area. That also is planting trees that they want to survive. But from an economic perspective, the idea that they would just replace the trees over and over again is not practical. So they're going to want to set this up in a way that it's going to provide what is being proposed in a long-term fashion. I don't know if that really answers the question at all. We've come up with a plan that was recommended, with county staff to hide the facility from adjacent properties. We feel confident that Timmons, who we've worked with before, certified landscape architects who know Virginia, that they came up with something that is appropriate. So I hope that was helpful.
Any other questions for these gentlemen?
All right, so I have seen the Fairfield site because I live 1.5 miles down from it. There are connections and hooking up to the grid and such, and that's nothing mentioned in it because I know technically that might not be your area of construction, but that's something that's just not developed in it because you got to run lines, you got to hook it up to the back grid. I mean, none of that is actually outlaid into it either. So I just don't know if that's been planned out at all, like where it's supposed to be, or
absolutely. The southwestern portion of the project, if you look at the conceptual site plan, there is an area where it shows the point of interconnection on the existing 24.5 kV distribution line. And then there should be, I think it's a maybe black hatched
101.
black hatched box that shows the interconnection facility area, which will be a five pole interconnection facility.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think it should be P101 or P102.
Got it?
Yeah. 101 chose it best.
101. Okay.
Yeah, he's got it.
Any other questions? These guys while they're up? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Just like to clarify just a few points. It was stated that the decommissioning plan was not available to the public. That is included in your package, of course, and available online. Pages 227 to 239 is the decommissioning plan. It was stated during the meeting that was not available to the public. It was also
But the
stated.
agreement is not something that would be.
No, the agreement as utilizing previous draft conditions or previous conditions that were approved by the Board of Supervisors. It's acceptance of a decommissioning agreement incorporating the decommissioning plan. So that plan that's.
I just want to make sure if we're clear, people, you're talking about the plan. Yeah, there's a lot of words about the decommissioning plan, but the agreement is going to be.
It is a much more technical legal document than the plan is. Absolutely, yes. It was also stated that the molars, excuse me, the Holocene site was not in operation. That has been in operation for quite some time now. And if needed, I can touch base on the solar ordinance as far as the status of that, but I think I gave an overview of that prior to the public hearings.
And I promise this is the last question on that. I think you had mentioned to me that, or maybe it was somebody else, that at the Fairfield site, I know you're not the Fairfield site, that all the vegetative buffer is not done and yet they're operating.
I believe the front is done. The rear and the rear towards the interstate is not implemented yet. And the one to the sawmill side of the side of the solar development is not done yet. And that's because in that case, they have detention traps, and those detention traps will go away once the grass is established. And those traps are where some of this landscape plan is going to be planted.
Anything else? I'd just like to say that I think it's a well thought out application compared to other ones we've seen, but overall, well thought out application, well cited, with minimum impacts to neighbors. I know you gentlemen will see it at least in the short term, if not the long term. But in terms of where its location, someone mentioned it's pretty well hidden when it comes to Rockbridge County. I do believe that. Some of the concerns that were brought up about leaching of groundwater, that was a big one. I don't think that today's panels, that's a concern. I think it's pretty well buffered from streams, from neighbors, and overall very good application package. So I just like to say that to start off with. Anybody else?
No, I agree. I think it's a very good presentation, and I think we owe a round of applause to the citizens that came in, whether they talked for it or against it or whatever. I mean, this is what Rockbridge County is all about, determining our future. And some people don't think we have a plan, and yet we do okay. But anyway. That's my thoughts, and I expressed myself before about what I consider agriculture and what who I see this helping and supporting.
I do get the sense that there are some concerns or some desire to have maybe some additional conditions associated with if we were to vote on this tonight. Is there any interest in continuing? And we're also missing one member from the meeting tonight, as you all know. So,
I mean, I'm one of those ones that's concerned about that I haven't had enough time with the potential conditions if we were to approve it. I make a motion that we set the matter over to the next meeting of the Planning Commission on September 11th, 2024.
We have a motion to continue to the next September meeting. We have a second. We don't have a second, so the motion fails. Do we have another motion?
I make a motion to deny the application for the Warm Run solar project.
Motion to deny and second. All in favor?
No.
Opposed? No. So that's 2-2. Procedurally, we may need a little advice from council on that.
No, when under Robert's rules order, tied motion is a tie is a failed motion, so the motion fails.
Okay, do we have a third motion?
Agree to the motion that.
But you can make a motion to pass, and assuming it's tied again, that would also then fail.
Well, I mean, maybe the fact that we'll change somebody's mind. I mean, we can, I make a motion that we set this matter over to the next planning commission meeting on September 11th, 2024.
Say that again.
Continue it to the next meeting.
And the chair can second?
I'm not sure that's.
And for small committees under Robert's rules, the chair can second. However, that motion, the motion, so the chair, yes, the chair could second on this, and there can be a vote.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes to continue to the September planning commission meeting. All right. Again, thank you all for coming out and for your comments. Clear out.
I don't like this. But yeah, well, I mean, the alternative is for a city law. Well, that's what
Breaking new ground.
Yeah, I don't mean to be laughing at us such a critical, but
I mean,
no.
Never disagree.
Hey, folks, we still have the meeting going on and we're still recording for the next hearing. So if you would please exit to the hallway if you're not going to continue with the meeting. Okay, next up, we have Virginia Electric and Power Company doing business as Dominion Power, 5000 Dominion Boulevard, Glen Allen, Virginia. Public hearing for an application for a special exception permit for a public utility rebuilding a portion of its 115 kV transmission line located on the east side of Glasgow Highway, Route 501, in the agricultural and general uses A2 zoning district.
Yes, if you don't mind, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for a second and promote a few people to panelists. If you're with officially with the Dominion team, and I do not promote you, please raise your hand and identify your. I give a few minutes here. Oh, that's I got to remain open for. Oh, we had a public meeting sign.
Sign up there, it's fine.
I think the sign might be up there while we're. It might be, the sign might be already up there. I don't see it in the drawer. I think that's everybody. Ben Jackson's here, engineer on the project. Lane Carr is also representative of Dominion Power. If anybody else is on the crew, like to officially on the Dominion crew, please raise your hand. Use your raise hand button, and I will promote you to the panelist. With that, I'm going to share my screen again. All right, this is a twofold public hearing, if you will, or twofold application process. The first one is associated with the east side of Glasgow Highway. I'm gonna pull up my zoning on this as well. This project, Virginia Electric and Power Company, DBA Dominion Power, has made application for a special exception permit to rebuild a portion of its 115 kV transmission line that is located on the west side of the existing Balcony Falls substation. Of course, that's on the east side of Glasgow Highway. Property is in the agricultural and general use districts per section 603.03-9 of the regulations. Public utilities are used by special exception in the A2 zoning district. Property is located in the Natural Bridge Magisterial District. And so you may recall, we went through the process of the rebuild of the substation located on the north side of Glasgow Highway. And then I think it was 4 rebuilds, if I recall correctly, 4 rebuilds of the existing towers and 1 new tower going towards Skimmer substation, which I think is located in Amherst County. That application also included the rebuild of one of the towers that's located on the west side of the existing substation.
Excuse me, Chris, I think we need to open the door.
No, I said it can.
The signs up.
Signs up, yeah.
Yeah, we have a public meeting. So thank you for noticing that, though. And so this application that they're on, as far as the red dots on your screen represent the existing towers located there. And so the only tower that is going to be rebuilt on the east side of the Glasgow Highway is actually north side. Once you go around the corner there, is going to be this location there. With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to, I think, Lane Carr or Ben Jackson to review additional details of the application.
Sure. Good evening. Doing IT test. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Very good. Good evening. I'll try to keep this concise for you guys, given the late hour. As Chris mentioned, my name is Ben Jackson. I'm a civil engineer with Kimley Warren, representing Dominion Energy tonight. We also have Lane Carr on the Zoom call with Dominion Energy, and I believe a person from Dominion physically with you guys tonight. As Chris mentioned, this is the Balcony Falls to Buena Vista transmission line rebuild. Let me share my screen so I can visual. Second here. Pull up the map. All right, can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, very good. As Chris indicated, this is kind of a 2-for-1 package here, 2 separate SEs, one, we're all part of the same project. One for the tower, black dot located here, that's in the A2 zoning district, and then some other transmission structures to the north, which I'll go to in a second, that are located in the floodplain. The total job is about 2 miles and change, originating here at the Balcony Falls substation on Route 501, going to the north and to the northwest. I should point out that the name of the job, the name of the application is the Balcony Falls to Buena Vista transmission line rebuild. This is just phase 1. This is not extending all the way to Buena Vista. It's going just to the river there to the north. Phase 2 will continue to the town at a later date. So just focusing on this 2-mile section, phase 1 for right now. So the scope of the project is replacing 12 transmission structures, upgrading them. They're about 100 years old, just at the end of their life. They need to be upgraded for safety and reliability reasons. As I indicated, one is located here along Route 501. And I'm panning to the north here, switched sheets. There's another 5 existing transmission structures here located in the floodplain district. That's part of the other special exception application. You can see the river, Maury River, located here for reference. And then the last page here, the last 6 structures, the black dots here, that will be replaced and upgraded as a part of this package. There's also, it might be a little difficult to see, some pink symbology here. Those are 7 temporary transmission structures that are also included with this. When I say temporary, that means they'll be installed and in place for about 6 months and then taken down. So some photo simulations of what you guys can expect. I know pictures paint 1,000 words here. I will walk you through these. In general, the existing transmission structures out there are the galvanized lattice type that you see on the left of your screen here, and will be replaced with the weathering steel structure that you see on the right, which is more brown in color, fits in with the surrounding landscape a bit better. This structure in particular that I've got up is the one that is closest to the substation along Route 501 that's in the A2 zoning district. And as you can note, the height is indicated on here, a similar height before and after. So this is down in the valley in the floodplain here, going to the north. As you can see, very similar replacement style before and after, existing lattice to the weathering steel finish, monopole, and very similar height. Continuing for comparison number 3, continuing to the north, here we've got an existing steel monopole and an existing wood monopole, and the after would be a weathering steel monopole again. This one's a little bit taller, but the work is in the same transmission corridor, which I should note that all of this work is in the existing transmission corridors. It's not being widened. Okay, rendering number 4, very similar. Here's your existing weathering steel, proposed weathering steel, a little bit taller in height. And I believe the last one shows what those temporary structures will look like once constructed. Those range in height from 39 to 70 feet. And as I indicated before, they'll be in place for about 6 months. And with that, that concludes our presentation. I'm happy to take questions from the commission or from Mr. Slayton.
Okay, do we have any questions at this point? Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone signed up physically to speak?
Rockbridge.
I think somebody signed up on.
We'll recognize anybody else that wishes to make a public comment.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, Mr. Slayton. Good evening. My name is Win Locker. I live in the Carr Street Magisterial District, and we own a farm in the Natural Bridge Magisterial District. It is the subject of tonight's special exception permit. And I wanted to speak tonight on the proposed permit application. The first and largest issue I have with the application is that we were unaware that this request on page 382 in your packet was being submitted on our behalf. It was submitted by Dominion without express written or oral approval by us or anyone associated with our farm. It was signed by a Dominion employee named Fallon Madrid. She is not the landowner. She was signed in the landowner's box, and the landowner since 2013 has been Baldwin G. Locker Jr. LLC when it was placed into conservation easements with the Virginia Outdoors Foundation. Because this form was fraudulently submitted on our behalf, we requested it be withdrawn from consideration by the Planning Commission and subsequently the Board of Supervisors. With that said, if this application remains on the agenda and for consideration, we request the following conditions be added to the special exception permit. Construction be limited to the dates between November 15th, 2024 and April 15th, 2025, so as not to interfere with growth, harvest, and subsequent planting. Further, that no extension be allowed to that time frame. Wooden mats be placed on any areas that will be traveled by vehicles, and all incoming and outgoing traffic be limited to the Columbia Gas right-of-way, with a commercial entrance in approval with VDOT guidelines be constructed at that site. Additionally, all poles that are being removed from the site be done so in their entirety and not cut below grade so that they are left, parts of them are left behind. Are there any questions or any of those points to be repeated? I know I speak fast.
You guys have any questions?
If it's part of the public hearing, it's not time for questions.
Okay.
There's no
Oh,
question.
okay.
Yeah, then thank you. Thank you. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak?
No one else, well, no one signed up, so we'll recognize anybody now.
Okay. No one's on the computer or the phone, Chris?
Yes. We have one hand raised. Ed, and I apologize, can't pronounce your last name. I'd butcher it if I did. You have your hand raised, and you might be a Dominion employee. I didn't catch you the first time.
No, I'm a family member, property owner there across the river from Glasgow, the Eccles Farm. And I have three concerns. One was already addressed by Mr. Locker. Or I guess two of them were the idea of working in the non-growing season. I think that's a must. The other one is I want to understand that the replacement of these poles is a one-to-one basis. At least that's my understanding. We're not putting up two poles in place of one existing pole. And then again, to reiterate something that Mr. Locker mentioned, we would like the footings completely removed from any of the existing poles. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I don't think we have anyone else on computer, do we? No one else on Zoom to speak, Chris?
No, that is it.
Okay. All right, with no further comments, we'll close the public hearing. And
The first question I'd have for Chris is it a valid request?
Yeah, so in the past, I've talked to Ms. Carr about this, and she may want to add to some of the comments. In the past, that we've done this several times. At one time, the first time I actually think we did this, it was associated with the Line 26 rebuild. And in that particular case, it went from the Lexington substation, or they call it Rockbridge substation, that's at Econo Lane, to the Turkey Hill substation. And so that particular case, there was probably literally 30 to 40, if not, I could give you the exact number of landowners that were associated with that. And so that particular application, and every application associated with one of these projects since that time, the landowner signature has remained blank. With that being said, talk to Ms. Carr. It was not done on purpose, in my opinion, and she can verify this, that they were not forging a signature, obviously on behalf of a landowner, or claiming to be the landowner, I should say, but rather the right of way owner, if you will. So John and Lane, if you could add some additional comments about past history with this,
Sure.
your understanding.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Locker. I completely understand your concern there and agree that should have been revised maybe to easement owner and not landowner. So, if we need to resubmit the application and revise that field there, we are happy to do that.
Just
Did it
speak
right.
on behalf of the county as the county attorney. I would prefer that you resubmit the application so that what we have is the correct application.
Yep, understood. Happy to do that.
To do that.
Yep.
Thank you. So I guess, Chris, that means that the application at this stage is withdrawn. And I don't sure in the planning commission situation, but normally you can't withdraw after the public hearing, but for the planning commission.
After you can't you can withdraw the application up into the point of the
Board of Supervisors.
Board of Supervisors
Okay.
public hearing. Once the public hearing is called, you cannot withdraw.
So if they're withdrawing it, then I guess that's then there's no need to make further action today.
I would agree. If they do provide for it, you got to come up and speak at the microphone.
Windlocker again. Just wanted to state that Dominion is not a full easement owner. They have the existing easements. They have through the field as shown with the existing poles. They have an existing easement that goes over to Mohawk, but all of the temporary poles, they do not yet have a temporary easement assigned by us. So they have not in full ownership of the easement rights for which they are requesting. Thank you.
When have they gotten in contact with you in regards to any of this?
Yes, so
Okay.
we've been in discussions with them about the temporary easement. We've not been able to come to an agreement yet. We are working through that with them.
Okay, I'd strongly encourage to something needs to go between the two. So,
Okay, thank you. So
Yes, we have, our real estate representative has been working since 2021 with the lockers for that temporary easement. The reason for the temporary easement, just so everybody knows, it's to maintain power to Mohawk. We've got to take an outage on the transmission line to rebuild those structures. So the purpose of the temporary easement is to maintain that power to the industrial customer.
I appreciate that. I just want to make sure contact's being made.
Yep, absolutely. Can I address Mr. Eccles, one of his questions? Is that okay?
yes,
Okay. Mr. Eccles, thanks for speaking up. You asked about one-to-one replacement. I believe your property is all on the east side of Glasgow Highway. Is that correct?
Can I still
Yeah.
talk? The agricultural part of our property is on the west side of 501.
Okay.
And that's the main concern.
I believe on your property there is one pole being replaced, and that is 1-for-1.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I am happy to, I can probably get your contact information somehow, but I'm happy to verify that and follow up and provide more information about exactly what it looks like now. You probably know that, but I can give you specifics about the replacement pole. Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
okay. Understanding that we're going to be doing this again in a month or two, while we have Dominion on there, could you guys address or consider some of the other conditions that were brought up earlier on Mr. Locker? Mainly the restriction, the time of year restriction on construction, if that's a possibility, and it would be nice to see on your plans the access routes and how you would manage those. I don't know if the Columbia Gas right of way is feasible if you've looked at it, but it would be nice to go ahead and address those or be thinking about them.
We do have construction access maps. Yep, we finished all of our DEQ permitting, and that's part of that effort. So we do have access maps. Didn't realize that was part of the special exception submission, but we are happy to provide those next time around.
Okay, and time of year restrictions, I don't know if you can address that or not, but
Yeah, I believe that will be worked out with the easement agreement with Mr. Locker about the time of year restrictions. I can't speak to, I don't want to speak for construction.
sure.
We've got to get an outage on the line, and you never know what can happen. So I'm hesitant to commit to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, I guess agenda item number 8 is withdrawn as well. So is that correct? We'll move on to number 9.
That is correct.
Okay. Amanda L. Goode and Jeffrey S. McDormand, 748 Valley Pike, Lexington. Application for conditional zoning map amendment from the agricultural transitional AT zoning district and the general business B1 zoning district to the general business B1 zoning district with acceptance of potential proffers.
Yeah, so in your, in the handout we gave you, you have a partially signed proffer statement. There's two, as stated by the chairman, there are two property owners associated with this. That is Amanda, her tax records, it's Amanda G. and Jeffrey S. McDorman. With that being said, as explained in your package, they have made the property is further identified as tax map 49-A-56. A little bit unusual, but the smaller properties, prior to 1980, I think somewhere around the 80s were essentially just zeroed out on the tax record. So it's 0 acres per tax records. Of course, when we're dealing with a rezoning, we need a recent survey. And in this case, we didn't have one until Mr. Dorsey surveyed it. So per a recent unrecorded survey, but it is signed by Brandon Dorsey, sealed by Brandon Dorsey, I should say. The property consists of 4.04 acres, currently split zoned between business and business, agricultural transitional and business zone. The application is rezoned the property to the general business zoning with acceptance of potential proffers. And those were in your, I think those were in the package, yes. And so Miss Goad has signed the proffers, and Mr. McDorman is anticipated to come in tomorrow morning to sign the proffers. Much like withdrawal of the public withdrawal of a application, the proffers can be submitted up until the public hearing with the Board of Supervisors, and they actually can be somewhat amended. There's some flexibility on amendments of proffers after that public hearing. I think it's materially changed is not allowed. Of course, the property is further identified as 2659 North Lee Highway, Lexington, Virginia, and sort of how this came to fruition. Mr. Corolla and Mr. Randolph are here in attendance. And they got a little ahead of themselves and started to develop the property just in a manner that they installed the concrete buttresses, bays in there. And so then they obviously came in for a building permit, and then that's our business license, I should say. And that's when the zoning was identified that the building's actually agricultural transitional. And so that we needed a rezoning to business. But then also they've been in conversation with VDOT. It's a much smaller property than originally anticipated due to the wide right of way in that area. And so we're all on the same page, and that was part of the proffer statement. So obviously proffers have to be voluntary and voluntary and offered there. In talking with Ms. Goad and Mr. McDorman, it was identified that a lot of the business uses, that some of the business uses would not be palatable for this size parcel or this size building. And so they have proffered certain uses that the property could be utilized for. With that, I'll turn it over to these gentlemen here, Mr. Corolla, to answer any questions about the application. I was anticipating Mr. McDorman and Ms. Goad to join us via Zoom, but that is, I don't believe they are on there.
Well, good evening, it ain't afternoon.
Morning, yes.
The plans for the building is initially, like Chris said, we got the cart a little ahead of the horse there when I started building bins and whatnot to start a small materials yard. But now what we're going to use it for is a sales center, retail sales, and offices. Move all the bins to another property, so our customers can go from this building where it's, well, like Chris said, the VDOT safety zone, as they was called it, is the property is very small now. So couldn't get any big trucks in and out, safety reason. So people come in there and go to the other property, get their load or whatever we're doing. And, and then we'll have offices, my office and Mr. Randolph's office there, just a small parking. It's what we're hoping to do there. To spruce it up a little bit, which I've tried to do over the past year from what it was when we first rented it from let's go.
And it's a landscaping business, is that correct?
Well, not really a landscaping. We're just going to sell stone, mulch, sand. We're going to stock cold mix asphalt. I don't know if you know what that is, but just and we're going to stock that for VDOT and stuff to that nature.
Okay. Any other questions for the gentleman?
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, oh, okay.
My name is John Randolph, and I'm part of this organization, what we plan on doing here. And when we first talked of leasing this property to do this and everything like that, it was I'm actually born in Rockbridge County. I'm from Brownsburg, and it's always been a business here at this 2659. But we did not understand that it was part of it was agriculture and that part of it was just business, because it's kind of abnormal for something to be under half an acre to be selling two different things. So, but basically, what we're trying to do over there is we want to have a general retail, but we're not trying to have like what he was saying, that have big trucks in there that would create a hazard with VDOT or anything like that. Because we know it's close to Route 11, and basically, when he says cold patch and stuff like that, then anything like anybody would come in and want to get something like that, that would be over another lot. It wouldn't be right off of Route 11. Okay? The only thing that we would have like on Route 11 would be something small that somebody could put in the back of a pickup or something like that. We won't have something like VDOT trucks actually coming in and picking something up right there off of Route 11. We basically Dorsey, the one that done the surveying and stuff like that, we had talked to him about another lot so that we could be able to move the concrete bins over there, and that way it doesn't create any kind of hassle at all. But we would like to be able to have a general retail, like if we sold a birdhouse or something like in the effect that would decorate somebody's house or something like that. So we're not trying to make a big major thing for somebody to build a house or something like that, or big something for commercial or something like that. But we just want to do it just under a small general retail. I'm hoping that you all realize that, I guess Super George is what most all of us know as being Super George and everything like that. And for years they did fireworks and they sold fireworks and different flags and stuff like that and everything like that. And I don't know. I heard one time it was one accident ever happened there. That's all I've ever heard of one accident ever happened there, even as long as he was there. And I think that we shouldn't have any problem with that or anything like that. And we wanted to go along, Chris, whatever you say we need to do in order to make it so it's safe or whatever. So it's not like it's just going to be something that we're going to have 50 cars in there at one time. It's something that's small scale. Y'all will consider what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions?
Just curious where your other lot, where you're gonna hold most of your materials, have you picked that out?
It'd be over like besides Days Inn. If you're coming down Route 11 and you're going towards Lexington, you come down past Days Inn and there's a road off to the right there. I can't think of it.
Underline Lane.
But right off of there is some storage, mini storage buildings up there. A lot of be over there, so it'll be off of Route 11, so that it won't affect the VDOT station.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. At this time, we're going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone physically present who'd like to speak?
Hands raised. We will go to the computer. If anybody'd like to talk for citizen comments, please raise your hand. Not seeing, turn it back over or turn it back over.
Okay. With no further comments, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Seems to me it's a pretty straightforward request. Kind of about as cut and dried as I get. That's just my take initially, but I don't know what you guys think.
We needed this tonight.
This is the property.
Yeah.
With the property.
I already got the property.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the rezoning of the property located on the southwest side of the intersection of North Lee Highway Route 11 and Valley Pike Route 645, identified as tax map number 49-A-56 from the agricultural transitional A-T zoning district and the general business B1 zoning district to the general business B1 zoning district be approved with the acceptance of the proposed proffers.
Okay, we have a motion
A second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, the last agenda item is, do we have a motion to adjourn for the evening?
A motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
I guess I'm for it.